3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the place where you're not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor, 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to another week and what is a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 375, the free Odyssey app, and of course, streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. That's 855-212-4227. And you could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. NFL Insider for Bleacher Report, also Underdog Fantasy, James Palmer. He's going to stop by at the top of the hour at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time. We'll go around all the NFL offseason storylines, whether it's Matthew Stafford, and if he's actually to get traded, what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. We could go on and on and on and on and on and on when we talk about those quarterbacks. Also, the big one in terms of Myles Garrett, as he'll eventually get traded. And obviously, Combine Week is here, so we'll see what rumors to emerge from the scouting combine in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. And let's start the show today with that, because we look at the number one pick in the NFL draft, and some years, and in most years, I would say, you usually know who's going to be the number one overall pick. I would say I thought one of the most intriguing years ever was the year where Baker Mayfield did go one overall. I thought most of us thought Sam Darnold was going to go number one overall. There was even a little chatter about Josh Allen. There was some chatter about Saquon Barkley, or should we say Saquon Barkley? And then like 2 days before the draft, out of nowhere, even though there was some momentum picking up for Baker Mayfield, you found out that Baker Mayfield was going to be the number one overall pick. And there's been other years, right, where there's been an incredible rise, like when the football season started where Joe Burrow, the 2020 draft, ended up going number one overall. If you would have told me that before that college football season, that Joe Burrow would have been the number one overall pick, people would probably ask you, what type of drugs were you on? But when it comes to this year, I think we legitimately do not know what the Tennessee Titans are going to do with that number one pick. And there's a few options on the table. They could take a quarterback, and you have to decide if it's either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders if you are taking a quarterback. Now, if you are going to take a quarterback, I think Cam Ward's going to be the first quarterback taken, and I think he'll go slightly before you see Shedeur Sanders go. Both quarterbacks, I got to think, at the worst, are going to go in the top 6, maybe at the latest, the top 7. Is there a chance that, the Raiders pass up on a quarterback if they maybe say, oh, we're going to go get Sam Darnold? They already got Sam Darnold, or another option. I guess it's a possibility. But you look at Tennessee, you're going to think they're at least going to be interested in taking a quarterback. Cleveland's at least going to be interested in taking a quarterback. The New York Giants are going to be interested in taking a quarterback. And the same could be said for the Raiders and the Jets. The Jets are probably the last team that if either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward are on the board at 7, that would think about passing up on a quarterback. And I would think that eventually both quarterbacks go. In all likelihood, I still think 2 in the top 3, but at the absolute latest, 2 in the top 7. So Tennessee has to make that decision. 1, do you want a quarterback? And 2, if you do want a quarterback, which quarterback are you going to take? But if they go, we don't want a quarterback, then you got to make that decision off a few things. Are you going to trade that pick? Now, I don't know what the return would be. This is perceived to be not a deep quarterback draft class. I don't think anyone believes Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are generational talents. But with that being said, I think the way that we're starting to talk about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders has gone a bit too far. Like, I will acknowledge, do I think Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward are ever going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL? No, I do not. But can both still become very good, maybe I even say great franchise quarterbacks for whoever drafts them? Yeah, both of them can. And I know that some people are saying, hey, they don't have a first-round draft grade on Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. You may not have a first-round draft grade on it. I don't see how. But even with that being said, they're going to go both in the top 10, in all likelihood, both in the top 6 or top 7 picks. Now, may they not be as highly revered as other years? Sure. But with that being said, you always know that there is need and there is desperation. And in this league, you either have a quarterback or you don't. And it's rare that you could win without having a marquee franchise quarterback. For every Brad Johnson and for every, Trent Dilfer and Nick Foles, I could give you a lot more names of franchise quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls compared to quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls that aren't franchise quarterbacks. Like, you look at the last 30 years, you look at the names from Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger, Wilson, Breeze, Mahomes. You could go on and on and on and look at Rodgers, and you could look at not only the great franchise quarterbacks that have won, but quarterbacks that are in the top 5, top 10, top 15 conversation of all time. So I still think, even though this is not the most desired year and it's not the most deep year to get a quarterback, if Tennessee and Mike Borgonzi comes out and says, hey, we're not ready to take a quarterback. This is year one for me as the GM. I've only been on the job for a few weeks. We're open for business. You got to think, right? I don't know what you would get, and that's the other part. But teams like a Cleveland who's sitting at 2, the Giants sitting at 3, maybe this opens up the door for the Raiders at 6 or the Jets at 7 to get aggressive, to go make way, to go get the number 1 overall pick in the draft. But, maybe Tennessee says we want to keep the pick because they kind of kept all options on the table. And they've been very vague. Like their president came out and he said, we're not going to pass up on a generational talent. Now, we may not view Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders as generational talents. Also, I know that this time of the year, it's a lot of lying season. But when you say, hey, we're not going to pass up on a generational talent, you could take whoever with the number 1 overall pick. And you could justify that, or you could talk yourself into thinking you took a generational talent, even if a lot of people don't think so. So by saying that, it has a lot of us guessing on what Tennessee's going to do, whether that's taking a quarterback, whether that's trading the pick, or you look at who I think the 2 best players are in this draft, they could also go there, and neither of those players that are the 2 best players in this upcoming draft in April 2025 are quarterbacks. I think Abdul Carter is the best player in the draft. And then I think Travis Hunter is the second best player in the draft. So those are really the options. Those are really the names to consider if you're Tennessee. It's kind of a 4-step plan where you got to see where you're going to say yes to ultimately. And you start with, are you going to take a quarterback, right? And if you do, it's either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Then if you say, okay, I'm not going to take a quarterback, it comes down to 3 options. Do you trade the pick? Do you draft Abdul Carter? Or do you draft Travis Hunter? Now, I put up this poll question last night. And the poll question is, what should the Tennessee Titans do with the number 1 overall draft pick? And here were the results off draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders is one option, draft Abdul Carter, draft Travis Hunter, or trade the pick. The majority, 46.2%, say trade the pick, which I thought was interesting. Then 26.6% say draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Then 14.1% say draft Abdul Carter. And then 13% say draft Travis Hunter. And if I'm ordering this is what I would do. I would say 1 is take the quarterback. You either have a quarterback or you don't. And I'll explain more in just a second. But I would say for Tennessee, what should they do? It's either draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. That would be 1. Then if I'm not drafting Cam Ward or Shedeur, then if you're not going to take a quarterback, even though I believe the 2 best players in the draft are Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, I would then explore what you could get for that number 1 overall pick. And I don't know if you're going to end up getting a Chicago Bear, Carolina Panthers kind of return, but could you get at least 1 additional first-round pick? Yeah, that's where it's at least starting and then some. How much, though, after that on the then some, that's the ambiguous part. So I would go draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders 1, trade the pick 2, and then I would actually say draft Abdul Carter 3, and then draft Travis Hunter 4. That's the way that I would order it. But even though I've said I don't think Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are the best player in this draft, or not even a top 5 to 7 player in this draft, I'll keep on going back to this, and I do ultimately believe that not only should Tennessee draft Cam Ward, I think they will draft Cam Ward. Because I'm trying to think why they wouldn't. Right? They need a quarterback. And what's going to be the easiest argument people are going to make? Oh, well, you could trade back, get more picks, and then next year you could get your quarterback. Well, we don't really know what the quarterback draft class is going to be next year. Like, you have an idea. But as I've said, there have been years where names have emerged out of nowhere. Also, heading into this past draft class, if I was to ask you this time last year after, let's say, the draft ended, and you looked ahead at this upcoming draft class for this year, who was going to be the number 1 quarterback? It was Carson Beck. Not only did Carson Beck not declare for the draft and stick through it, he ended up transferring, and now he goes from Georgia to Miami. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on just saying, A, it's so easy to just, get a quarterback next year. And also, there have been years, look at the Miami Dolphins. They ended up getting Tua. But everyone thought they were going to be the number 1 overall pick heading into that draft. They ended up picking 5. And I'm just looking at it right now. There's this website called NFLDraftBuzz.com. And they list their top 10 quarterbacks for next year. And once again, we don't know if all these guys are going to declare. But let me give you the top 10. Arch Manning, that's a sizzle name. Arch Manning has also, as great as people think he could be, he's never played a full season of college football. Nico Iamaleava is then 2. Had a good season this past year at Tennessee. I think that there is an incredibly high ceiling with him. Big quarterback, mobile, big arm, but he's got to put it together. There were some games, like in the beginning of the season, the first half, he was awesome. The second half, there was a lot of games he looked like a deer in headlight. Then the third quarterback is Drew Aller. People keep on telling me how great Drew Aller is, and then when I watch him play in the big moments, I don't see him get to that level of greatness. Then there's Lenore Sellers, right? Can run, turns over the ball, has to work as a passer, but he is an athletic freak, and he's a specimen, and he did a very good job last year at South Carolina. But now let's see if not only can he replicate it, but if he could get better. Garrett Nussmeier, solid quarterback at LSU. Cade Klubnik, who is solid at Clemson. You got Sam Levitt, who I think is up and coming. We just saw a little bit, and now there's going to be more on his plate without Cam Scatterbo there at Arizona State. You have Jackson Arnold in at 8. Jackson Arnold just got benched at Oklahoma. Now he's playing for Auburn. You have no clue what he's going to be. Miller Moss just transferred as well. And then you look at Carson Beck. Those are the top 10 prospects for next year, according to NFLDraftBuzz.com, who just lost his job at Georgia, and now he's going to wind up being the quarterback at Miami. So it's easy to say, oh, Tennessee could just get a quarterback next year, and they're probably going to be bad next year. But you don't know how great the quarterback draft class is going to be. And if you throw Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders in that draft class, you know, I would say outside of Arch Manning, just for Cam Ward, because I think Cam Ward is going to go number 1 overall. I think he's going to be the first quarterback taken. Outside of Arch Manning and the prospects of him, is it a guarantee that Nico Iamaleava, Drew Aller, Lenore Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, Sam Levitt, these guys that we're talking about for next year, are they going to be viewed better than where Cam Ward is viewed right now? So ultimately, I think Tennessee should take Cam Ward, who I think is a poor man's Ben Roethlisberger. And I think that they ultimately will take Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick. And I think they call their shot. They grab who their quarterback is. We'll see after this year if Borgonzi wants to keep Callahan as the head coach. But Cam Ward would be your guy that you're going to build with for Mike Borgonzi's probably first and only attempt to get the quarterback position right in Tennessee. It's easy to say, hey, I don't love the quarterbacks. It's easy to say, oh, wait until next year. But you don't know, A, if you're going to be back in the number 1 spot, and also you don't know who's going to be great next year because a lot could change a year from now. So when you're in the number 1 spot and you need a quarterback, I would say 9 times out of 10, you ultimately take a quarterback. And even though it may not happen, I can't sit here and tell you with 110% certainty that they definitely will. But right now, you say, Zach, gun to your head, what is Tennessee doing with the number 1 overall pick? I'm going to say they're going to draft Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami, who was at Washington State, who was at Incarnate Word, and it's one of the great rise stories ever. When, right, you look back at some of these guys, Burrow was fantastic rise story. You look at Baker Mayfield, a great rise to the top of the draft type of story. But you look at Cam Ward, he literally had no stars to his name when he was a recruit. He had to go to Incarnate Word, right? And then he makes his way to Washington State, makes his way to Miami, and now I ultimately think he'll be the number 1 pick in the draft. So that's where we start with the combine here. We're going to start at the top of the draft. What will the Tennessee Titans do with the number 1 overall pick? What should they do? And I think they will, and I think they should take Cam Ward, the quarterback, out of Miami. How about you? 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. And once again, you can chime in on that poll question if you don't want to jump on my phone lines, at Zach Gelb on Twitter. And it's what should the Titans do with the number 1 pick? Right now, 46.2% say trade the pick, 26.6% say draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, 14.1% say draft Abdul Carter, and 13% say draft Travis Hunter. We'll take a timeout. When we come on back, the Rams are letting Matthew Stafford seek a trade, and talk to other teams. What does this really mean? I'll give you that answer when we come on back in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
I just got a chuckle during the break. The 49ers have signed offensive lineman Ben Bartch to a 1-year contract extension. Now, you may be saying, Zach, why are you bringing up Ben Bartch? Well, I remember interviewing him before the draft, and it was right after the combine. He was the guy. He ended up going to St. John's in Minnesota, and he ended up being the fourth round pick, 116th overall to the Jaguars. He needed to put on 50 pounds of weight in college, right, as he became an offensive lineman. So he ended up coming up with these protein shakes. And in the protein shakes, it had 7 scrambled eggs, cottage cheese, quick grits, peanut butter, bananas, and Gatorade. So we put him on the air after the combine. I forget who it was. One of the reporters from the NFL Network was doing the smooth. I think it may have been Colleen Wolfe, actually. I could be wrong on that. But she was basically doing the TV bit with Ben Bartch, and it was make the smoothie and try it on the sideline in Indianapolis at the combine. So we reached out to his agent. We put him on. And then like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the draft, we got a phone call. And it was someone claiming they were Ben Bartch. And my producers at the time were Mike Biseglia and also Tom DiBenedetto. And D-Ben was like a draft nerd. We used to do prospect profiles with him, and we would have him count down like 50 to 100 prospects, and he would just give us stats and info and you know, crazy like news about these guys, and we made him do like 5 a day or something like that. So at the time, because it was during COVID, it was in 2020, April of 2020, March of 2020, whatever it was, I was in my basement doing the show. So I'm on the air, and I get like down the line in my ear, hey, look at the email. And it was like, Ben Bartch is on the line. And I go, Ben Bartch that we just interviewed like 3 or 4 weeks ago? And then D-Ben, you could confuse both of them. But Tom DiBenedetto then said to me, I can't say for certain it's him, but he called saying he was working out, enjoyed coming on the show a few weeks ago, and he wanted to come on the air, because he started listening to us. So I'm interviewing him. Like, I bring him on. Ben Bartch is on the line. Ben, what's happening? And I was skeptical. Like, I must have said it 4 or 5 times during this second chat. Hey, I don't really know if this is Ben or not, but it's someone claiming to be Ben. Like, who calls in and says they're Ben Bartch, for crying out loud? So I said, oh, what are you doing for the draft? And he goes, oh, I'm going to have like 100 people over. And it was right in the middle of COVID. I was like, I don't know about that. Right? And that put my antenna was even up even more after that. And then he said something about the school. And I'm like, this isn't Ben Bartch. I can't continue this conversation. Well, we found out his actual agent, Ben Bartch, ended up calling us like a few days later. And he was like, did someone call you saying they were Ben? And we were like, yes. There was a guy. And like Ben Bartch is not relatively known. The only reason we knew of him was because of the protein shakes that he did to gain 50 pounds. And I was like big on protein shakes then. And that's like when I really started to focus in on losing weight. And I'm like, oh, this guy is gaining weight. I started really my weight loss with protein shakes, healthy protein shakes, things like that. So we had him on. So his agent ended up calling Biseglia and was like, did you have someone claiming that they were Ben on the air? We're like, yeah. He goes, Zach was skeptical. I hung up on him. Turns out there was a Ben Bartch imposter. impersonator. He called like 7 radio shows. And since we were the national show in their local area, we didn't know that that person was calling like other local radio shows in that area. So anytime I see the name Ben Barch, I remember our real interview with him. And then I remember the Fugazi interview with him as well. So I was not expecting to see that during the break. Anyway, let's get to Matthew Stafford. This is Peter Schrager of NFL Network on Matthew Stafford's future with the Rams. Remember, I have to just say this. Peter Schrager is very, very, very close to Sean McVay. He was invited to Sean McVay's wedding. So I'm not saying McVay's telling him this stuff, but Peter Schrager, it would not surprise me if he has better insight. Regardless, he's a tremendous reporter, and he does a great job, Fox, NFL Network. But when it comes to the Rams, I don't think he's putting something out there unless he knows it's true. Here's Peter Schrager.
Those guys actually have a fine relationship. This was nothing that is between them personally. This is a money issue. And Matthew Stafford wants to be paid what he thinks he's worth. He wants to be paid more than $50 million. There are teams that are willing to pay him more than what the Rams are currently willing to pay him. The question is, does Stafford want to go to those teams? And what are those teams willing to give up? The issue with this year for Stafford is if they do trade Matthew Stafford, there are quarterbacks who would likely love to play for the Rams. Aaron Rodgers lives in Malibu in the offseason. You don't think he'd want to just mix it up for a discounted price and play with Sean McVay for a year? Of course he would. I don't know if I can envision a world where the Rams go on without Stafford, but I don't think the Rams are going to break their back to pay Matthew Stafford top dollar.
So he may want $50 million a year, right? At least $50 million. Right now, Matthew Stafford is a $40 million a year guy, average annual value. So are you going to get $10 more million a year and be happy, right? Because I'm sure there's another team that would be willing to give you 10 more extra $1 million a year, but you could also go to a dreadful destination and have no shot of winning something ever again. Now, if you're fine with that, all right, then Matthew Stafford won't be a Ram. But I don't think Matthew Stafford could get the best of both worlds, where he's going to get the number that he wants and also be in a winning situation. So I have no problem with the Rams are doing. I think what the Rams are doing is smart and it's good business. You know what, Matt? We have our price, and I don't know what that price is, to be fair, but they have a price that they're willing to go for Matthew Stafford. You think you could top our price, whatever our price is. You go out there with your agent and you go talk to these other teams. And when you go out there and talk to the other teams, and Albert Breer, by the way, he said 4 teams have shown interest in Matthew Stafford. Steelers, Browns, Giants, Raiders. So if let's just say the Rams go, we're only going to give you $5 more million a year. Make $45 million a year. And let's say the Raiders go, we'll give you 52. Do you want more money and go to the Raiders? You have no shot of winning? Or would you rather just take, at the end of your career, still getting $45 million a year, but it's not the 50, 52, whatever that you want, and you could actually have a shot to win with the Rams? That's what you have to ask yourself. You could bring up the Giants. It's the same thing. The Giants are nowhere close to winning. Now, you do have a Malik Neighbors, right? Just like with the Raiders, you got Brock Bowers, but those teams are so far away. The Cleveland Browns, Nick Chubb's a free agent. Myles Garrett wants out. You really want to end your career on the Cleveland Browns when in all likelihood you go into next year as the 4th team in that division? And I think the only team that maybe you say to yourself, okay, if they're willing to give me $52 million a year and the Rams are going to play hardball, that you would consider are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't have a great offensive line. Their defense regressed last year. You have a very good coach in Mike Tomlin. You have a team that hasn't won a playoff game since the 2016 season, and you got George Pickens. And you know what? I don't think this is going on a limb. I'd rather have Puka Nacua as my number 1 wide receiver because Cooper Kupp's going to get traded than George Pickens. Like, George Pickens may have a higher upside in this league, and he may be more physically gifted than Puka Nacua. But Puka Nacua, when he's on the field, this guy puts up incredible numbers the last 2 years. And here's the best part about Puka Nacua. There's no ego. Unlike George Pickens, where if you have one-off pass or if you don't throw him the ball, he acts as if he's the greatest wide receiver ever, and he starts to channel his inner Antonio Brown pretty much. And he only likes you when you get him the football. So the Steelers are the only one, and I don't think you go to Pittsburgh and you win a Super Bowl, and that's the thing. You've already won a Super Bowl with the Rams, And you look at the Rams, they still have a window for the next 2 years with Matthew Stafford as their quarterback, because they can only really expect Stafford to still be good for 2 more seasons. And after that, it's a crapshoot because he's already going to be 37. But this guy should have 2 more runs at it or 2 more shots at it to go win another Super Bowl with the Rams. So ultimately, I do think Stafford is going to be back. But if it is going to come down to money, and there's always money a part of it, and I don't know what the Rams are offering him. I haven't seen that. But right now he makes $40 million a year. That clip says he wants at least $50 million. What is your actual low point? Because in negotiations, right, you'd be stupid to start off with, what you're going to settle. You start off high and you start off ambiguous, and it's like, oh, he wants $50+ million. And right now the Rams are only paying him 40. So what is the come up that the Rams need to do where even if it's not reaching at least $50 million, well, Stafford goes, okay, I'll return to the Rams rather than go play for the Browns, the Giants, or the Raiders. But I'm more than fine with the Rams saying, you think you can get a ridiculous contract and be happy? Go test the market. Because what will happen here is you will have teams that are interested, like we said. Maybe one of them gives them what he actually wants, and then he'll go back to the Rams, and he'll say, make me a final offer. And then he's going to have a decision to make. Do you take the Rams' final offer, or do you tell the Rams, hey, trade me to, I don't know, the New York Giants? And then they got to figure out the compensation component to that as well. But you look at the AAV in this league right now, and I'll start from Rodgers, right? Because Rodgers gets thrown out there. And I know Rodgers is about to become a free agent. But right now, where the average annual value is at for quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers at $37.5 million. Now, if the Rams say goodbye to Stafford, I'm not bringing in Sam Darnold. I'm not bringing in Russell Wilson. I'm not bringing in Justin Fields. I would bring in Aaron Rodgers on a year contract. My preference is to keep Stafford, but if Stafford wants out, then I would bring in Aaron Rodgers. So Rodgers, 37.5. Stafford right now is making $40 million. Maybe the 2 biggest bargains in the NFL. Josh Allen, $43 a year. Patrick Mahomes at $45. Kirk Cousins, $45. Deshaun Watson, $46. Kyler Murray, $46.1. Jalen Hurts, $51. Lamar Jackson, $52. Justin Herbert, $52. Jared Goff, $53. Tua Tagovailoa, $53. Trevor Lawrence, $55. Jordan Love, $55. Joe Burrow, $55. And Dak Prescott, $60. I just gave you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 quarterbacks. Right? Ranging from $37.5 million to $60 million. There's a lot of quarterbacks in there. Like some, hey, no doubt about it, worth it. Like Mahomes, no doubt about it, worth it. Jalen Hurts, no doubt about it, worth it. Josh Allen, no doubt about it, worth it. Matthew Stafford, no doubt about it, worth it. Joe Burrow, no doubt about it, worth it. But then there's some other quarterbacks that you hear the price and you're like, they're making that much money? So for Matthew Stafford, you could want more money. No one's faulting you. Go get what you think you deserve, and now you could explore that. But I'm just wondering, are you still going to be able to be happy? And can you get the contract that you want? And can you also have a good team? And I think out of those teams that have been floated out there by Albert Breer, Steelers, Browns, Giants, Raiders, it comes down to how far are the Steelers willing to go? Because if it's just about the money, then all right, go end your career with the Browns, Giants, and Raiders and have no chance of sniffing a playoff. But I do think it's about winning and getting more money. And ultimately, it makes too much sense on both sides for the Rams and Matthew Stafford to find a way to find the middle ground and get a deal done. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a timeout. When we come on back, my 5 biggest storylines to watch for the second half of the NBA season. Update time first, though. Here's the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
And it's sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Your small business keeps you on the go. Progressive Commercial Insurance keeps your policy within reach with their easy-to-use mobile app. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com. Big names and veterans will find themselves in the free agent market a few weeks. Getting a head start is Shaq Thompson. The longtime Carolina Panthers linebacker was not having his contract renewed by the team. The 30-year-old won't be back with the team that drafted him in the first round back in 2015. The Thunder are running away with the Western Conference this year, currently 9.5 games up on Memphis and Denver, the top seed in the West. Goes for its third in a row tonight at home against the Timberwolves. MVP candidate Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 37 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists in last night's win and said this team has gotten better at closing out games.
No matter the environment, no matter the team, and it's usually the same formula for us. And for us, we know that it's about just getting to that possession after possession, like following the game plan, and then just reading the game from there. We know, like, when we do that, no matter the deficit, if there's enough time, we can get it done.
Now, in a big battle in the Big 12, where fourth-ranked Houston hosts Texas Tech, the Cougars have won 6 in a row and have a 3-game lead over the Red Raiders. Auburn remains number 1 in the AP Top 25. I'm Rich Ackerman.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is, play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Stu, this could be a little bit of a funky question because your team won here, but is there like serious intrigue for you for the Mavericks and the Lakers game that's going to come your way tomorrow evening at 10 p.m. Eastern time, even though Anthony Davis is not going to play because, to no surprise, he's going to be in street clothes because he's hurt once again. Is there any care for you as a Laker fan? Just wondering.
Yeah, I think so. I think Luka playing his old team is interesting. It would have been more interesting if Davis was healthy, though.
Yeah.
100% would have been more interesting.
Well, that was kind of my point. It's, okay, sure, you get to see Luka go up against the Dallas Mavericks. I don't think anyone in the Dallas Mavericks is like, F Luka.
No.
I think it's more so the fans are just saying, hey, bleep our team and our incompetent general manager in Nico Harrison. So it's weird where when you get into that game that's going to come your way tomorrow night, if Anthony Davis was there, I think the Laker fan would care a little bit more. Because say what you want about AD, you did win a championship with him, and that's something that you can't take away. But from a Laker perspective, it's okay. I guess let's just embarrass the Dallas Mavericks tomorrow night is the way that you look at it. But if anything, if the Lakers end up losing, in the first round of the playoffs or whatever, if the Mavericks are there, but we'll have to wait and see. I know they're 31-27, but it's like if the Mavericks end up going on a run, which I don't think they will, Stu, you should be like the biggest fan of the Dallas Mavericks. They just gave you life after LeBron James, which is crazy.
Yeah. No, certainly. It's amazing. And again, I think if this game was in Dallas, not that Luka would get booed.
It'd be more intriguing.
It'd be more intriguing. But the fact it's in L.A., and no Anthony Davis, that would have been interesting to see how he got. Again, I don't think he would get booed either, but it would just be interesting to see him going home to the team that traded him.
I think Lakers fans should love Anthony Davis. He won a championship. I get it. He wasn't always healthy. There are times where he was incredibly frustrated, but when he was with you, he was a top 10 player in the league, won a championship, and he led you to be the major cog in order to get life after LeBron for Luka Doncic. Now, I'm not going to ignore that only Nico Harrison makes that move, but I don't think any Lakers fan should have any resentment for Anthony Davis. It would have been interesting if AD left in a few years, or if AD became the guy, the face of the franchise, LeBron retires, and then he just couldn't end up staying healthy and he couldn't carry the baton. But the guy won you a championship and he got you Luka Doncic. To me, if I'm a Laker fan and you're bitching about Anthony Davis, you need to learn how to enjoy life more, because you should only look back now at Anthony Davis in a glowing way. Forget about Magic, forget about Shaq, forget about Kobe, forget about LeBron, Wilt, right? Forget about the greatest Lakers of all time. Anthony Davis, greatest of all time with what he was able to do. Win you a championship against Luka. Alrighty, someone's going to take that seriously. That will end up on some clip somewhere. And people will be like, oh, what an idiot this guy is. He knows nothing about the NBA.
Should we pull that?
Yeah, go ahead. It's time to ask the pros, where you, the listener, get to ask us a question, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at INF Sports Center, at Zach Gelb, using the hashtag #AskThePros. Be listening later in the show. We might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. For whatever the reason was, probably because nothing was on really this weekend. I had a little hockey. And you also had some college basketball. I enjoyed watching the college basketball. Duke is going to be such a tough out in this tournament. Auburn just continues to look like the most deep and best team in the nation. I would not be upset if we see Auburn-Duke either in the Final Four or in the national championship game. I think it would make for a magnificent Final Four with those two teams meeting up at some point in the Final Four. Pitino, UConn is just not great this year. They've won back-to-back championships. I understand people love to kick Dan Hurley right now because he asked for it. Like, don't get me wrong. I love Dan Hurley. I love him, but I'm not going to shred him and eviscerate him when he just doesn't have a great team this year after the guy just won back-to-back national championships. But Pitino, if St. John's, here's the hot take of the day. If St. John's continues to shoot like that, not many teams are going to be able to find a way to take down the Johnnies when it matters. But those are the three things that really stood out to me from the weekend. Was Auburn, was Duke, and then also it's just great for the sport of college basketball with Rick Pitino not only coaching, right, because he's coached since the Louisville thing ended, right? He was at Iona. But to have him at St. John's, or St. John's right now, I think is up to 7th in the latest AP poll. He has them humming, and he's got the Johnnies moving in the right direction. But I did watch a good amount of NBA this past weekend, and I've come up with my 5 biggest second half NBA storylines. So in at number 5, we already know, right, Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo have won their MVPs. They have won their finals MVPs as well, and they both won an NBA championship. Can either this year, with Nikola Jokic being on the Nuggets and Giannis Antetokounmpo being on the Bucks, even though every year everyone tries to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Bucks, can either one of them go get that second championship? You know, because in the East, we're still talking about Boston, right? In the West, it's bizarre, Stu, and you follow the West a lot more closely than I am. I would still not want to play Denver, obviously, in a 7-game series, but it doesn't seem as if Denver and Milwaukee both still get that national respect, even though they have 2 of the top 5 players in the sport, and both have won championships recently. I think when you look at the East and the West, the Nuggets and the Bucks, even though they don't play similar styles, it's kind of the Spider-Man pointing gif, where it's okay, Giannis could point at Nikola Jokic, where they still don't get that, hey, best player in the league, even when Nikola Jokic has won all these MVPs, and people think, okay, they won one championship, but not many people are saying they go win the second one, even though it's right there for the taking this year.
Yeah, it is weird, especially with the Nuggets. You would think they would be considered in that top group. Like, yeah, it's more like it's the Thunder and then everyone else, but I think the Nuggets are closer to the Thunder than everyone else, I guess.
Yeah, and at least in the East, right? I'm not saying that you bury Milwaukee, but until someone takes out Boston when it matters, with them just winning the championship, I could see why you ask, oh, is it going to be Boston in the field? So that's my 5th storyline. Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, can either one get the next one? 4. So last year in the postseason, even though his team didn't get to the NBA Finals, even though they didn't win a championship, I think it was the national respect for Anthony Edwards. So I'm wondering this year, can Ja Morant with the Memphis Grizzlies, or can Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who people acknowledge as a top 5 player in this league, can either leave their mark in the NBA postseason? Right? It's one thing to have incredible regular seasons, like Ja now being back with Memphis, coming off the suspension, coming off the injuries having, SGA what he's done the last few years, but can either go on one of these deep playoff runs and leave a mark really on their career of them taking that next step where we don't just go, oh, they're a great player, to, okay, you're a great player with a big-time moment associated with it. Number 3, are the Celtics going to repeat? And I have to amend a statement that I made last week. Last week I said, even though I love Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs, I still think if you ask me 3 teams to get to the NBA Finals out of the East, it would either be the Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, or the New York Knicks. After what I've seen in their last 2 games up against Cleveland and the Celtics, I can't say the Knicks there or that 3rd team. Yeah, I got to put the Cavs in there. So Cavs, Celtics, and Milwaukee, I think one of those teams get out of the East. But the question here and the storyline here to monitor is, will the Celtics repeat? That's the question for me, because I still think pound for pound in the Eastern Conference, when push comes to shove, the Boston Celtics are the best team. In at number 2, and it's funny, if I would have said this 3-4 weeks ago, can the Warriors go on a run? every single person would be looking at me and they'd be saying, Zach, you're crazy. Zach, no chance. And I would have been the same person saying that the Warriors can't go on a run. But they have life back in them. They're rejuvenated. And I know that they lost Klay Thompson this offseason. It was time for Klay to leave. They needed to find that next piece. Even though Jimmy Butler acted like a child in Miami, Jimmy Butler's now in a better spot. And you got Draymond. Clearly, Steph is the straw that stirs the drink. But Jimmy Butler, since coming over to the Golden State Warriors, we've only seen the Golden State Warriors lose one game. They beat Chicago. They beat Milwaukee. They lost to Dallas. They beat Houston. They beat Sacramento. And they just beat Dallas. And you're seeing what it's starting to look like. And now people are wondering, okay, can Golden State get hot? Can Golden State go on a run? Because there's always a fear factor when you play the Warriors. Because you have one of the greatest players ever, right? Guy's going to go down as a top 10 player of all time in Steph Curry. He's the greatest shooter I've ever seen. And now you got Steph not only still with Draymond there, and Draymond, right, you could say what you want about him. He's still a pain in the ass. But now you've added Jimmy Butler, who is that perfect complementary piece, that next guy up in Golden State. So I'm just wondering, how far can Golden State go? And then in at number one, it's Los Angeles Lakers. And we just saw what they did to Denver. They just beat them 123-100. And you look at four of those guys in the starting five. Luka goes for 32, 10 and 7. LeBron James goes for 25, 9 and 5. Rui ends up going for 21. Austin Reeves gives you 23 and 7 assists. You get production like that, where you get four guys in your starting lineup at least getting 20 points, and Luka popping off and going for 32 against the Denver Nuggets that, right, have Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter, clearly a start with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. They're two best players, Joker and Murray. Man, that was an impressive win for the Lakers. Like, usually with the NBA, I say it all the time, and the regular season doesn't really do much for me. That was a nice regular season moment for the Los Angeles Lakers and my dear friend J.J. Redick, coaching the team. That was a very nice moment up against Mike Malone and Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. So the question with the Lakers is, how far can this pairing of Luka and LeBron go, and does LeBron have another championship left in him? So those are the five biggest storylines second half of the NBA to monitor. Nikola Jokic and Giannis, who can get the next one. Can SGA and Ja go on have a big moment in the playoffs? Celtics, can they repeat? Can the Warriors go on a run? And what will Luka and LeBron do? James Palmer will join us next. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, welcome back in. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast, hour number 2 of our radio program on the Infinity Sports Network. Combine week is here, and I'll be curious this time next week how we're talking about who's going to go number 1 overall in the NFL draft. Also be curious if there's any intel that comes out with some big names that are obviously already in the league, whether it's a Myles Garrett trade, where is Aaron Rodgers going to land, and also what's the latest cooking with Matthew Stafford. So let's go out to the guest line right now. We'll chat some NFL offseason, we'll chat some NFL draft, some combine, and we'll do so with the senior NFL reporter and insider for Bleacher Report and Underdog Fantasy, and that is our pal James Palmer. James, always appreciate you doing this. Thanks so much. How you been?
I'm good, brother. You all right?
Yeah, fantastic. Can't complain. Right now, when it comes to the number 1 overall pick, I've thought long and hard about this, and I don't think the quarterbacks are great this year, but I still think Cam Ward ultimately is going to be the number 1 overall pick to Tennessee. What say you?
There was a lot of buzz, Zach, in New Orleans talking to people that maybe Nashville's looking to move out. Obviously, we're really early in the process, right? So there's a lot to dissect here, specifically with the quarterbacks, and they're going to do a ton of work on both of these guys that are kind of in the top, and Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. And I think if the consensus you look around the league is right now, Cam Ward's here and Shedeur's kind of below him. So if you're going to go quarterback, that appears to be the case with the Titans. But I wouldn't be surprised if they moved out. They have so many needs. If they decided to find a way to get a haul, I think that would behoove Mike Borgonzi, the new general manager, to look into that. Now, the issue is, I don't think if you wanted to move out of that one spot this year compared to years past, you're going to get the haul that you would in years past. So that might play a factor into this as well, just because you have to have teams willing to move up. And I think that's a big part of this combine coming up. A big part of the next couple of weeks is Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward really need to start selling how good they can possibly be to the rest of the league. If some of these teams that want to move down, whether it's the Patriots, whether it's the Jaguars, teams got to move up for quarterbacks, right? And so you got to sell that there's a necessity for some of these guys to come up. Right now with one, Abdul Carter wouldn't be terrible in my opinion. Like, that's already a pretty good defensive line. Like, that could be a really good defensive line. And you build off of that strength of that position group and you continue to look. But I don't get any sense right now that they're like quarterback or bust, if that makes sense.
And like, once you get out of the top 10, try to move up to 1, it gets too difficult. But if you look at the teams inside the top 10, Cleveland could use a quarterback. If, let's say, Tennessee's going to trade the pick, the Giants, the Raiders, the Jets, is there one team right now that you say, okay, they'll probably be a little bit more aggressive than the rest if Tennessee says, okay, we're going to open things up for business to trade the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, I think the teams that need quarterbacks, you mentioned all of them, and they're all looking in the free agent market. They're looking at what's going to happen with Sam Darnold, look what's going to happen with Matthew Stafford. They're going to look what's happened at the top of this draft if they can move. If you ask around, I would say the teams that have done the most work, I don't know if this is exactly your question, but the teams that have probably done the most work are the Giants and the Raiders. And looking at the draft and evaluating these quarterbacks and maybe put the most time in the back end of the season and seeing them play in person, going to their bowl games, whether they just played in the first half or not, and seeing them play as much as possible. I would say those teams have probably put in the most legwork right now, looking at these top quarterbacks. So maybe you look into those being the teams that will be most likely to move, but who knows? I think Brian Daboll last year made like a fake Valentine's Day trip just to make everybody think he was going one direction. So maybe Daboll's out there fooling us all again, but they're the two teams that I've heard are putting in the most work right now.
When you get to Matthew Stafford, James Palmer, because that's been, if it's not, right, who's going to be the number 1 pick? You got the Matthew Stafford conversation, Aaron Rodgers, Myles Garrett, but let's zero in here on Stafford. The Rams are going to let him talk to other teams to see what he could get out there financially. I still think ultimately Stafford's going to be back with the Rams and they'll boost up that salary a little bit, maybe not everything that he wants, because, if you're going to leave, I've seen Albert Breer throw out a few teams that are interested, right? The Browns, the Giants, the Raiders, like none of those are anywhere close to winning. Maybe the Steelers could get you intrigued and you think you could go win a playoff game there, even though they haven't done it since 2016. But ultimately, does your gut tell you that Stafford is just back with the Rams because it makes too much sense for both parties?
I think it's probably the front runner if you're betting on the different probabilities. I would say him returning probably has the best chance right now. I would, with everything you said in terms of the success for a 37-year-old quarterback looking to win another Super Bowl, the Rams gave the Eagles probably their biggest run in the back end of the season, I would say. And so if they would have beaten Philly, you almost assume they would have won the NFC Championship game. And so I just think, like, that's probably the most likely scenario. But every turn that we've had, there's been an instance where we've gone, they could have nipped this in the bud, and they haven't. And they could have said he's returning, and they haven't. And now we've gotten to a point to where those conversations have already been had, I'm told, with other teams, to where they can know his market value, they can know where he's at. Because let's just be honest, right now he's grossly underpaid for the way he plays the position. And so that's where they're looking to figure that aspect of it out, as well as the aspect of who would be willing to trade and what would that trade compensation be. Because this is a really young roster the Rams have, but they also, like, I know with all of this discussion, and it's exciting because I think Matthew Stafford is the linchpin for the quarterback market this offseason, and that includes the draft. And so what happens with him, everybody's following along and watching. But I do think, like, Sean McVay really likes Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford really likes playing for Sean McVay. And I think that part is still evident. I just think this is a matter of timing, contract timing, dollars and cents, really all of these things at play. And I think, to me, the reason we're following it is there is some disconnect there. Do they find their way back? They certainly can. But I think the Steelers were the team that you mentioned, to me, are the most interesting, because I think there's just a sense that I have that the Steelers, maybe as opposed to years past, are going to be a little bit more aggressive in taking the swing at the quarterback spot, because it just feels a little different in Pittsburgh right now, doesn't it? Like, there's teams calling, just, is Mike Tomlin available? Like, he's not, but like pressure and things like that, living in this, as my buddy Dan Hanser said, like elite mediocrity, which is what the Steelers are in the AFC. Like, maybe you need to take a big swing, and it's Aaron Rodgers or it's Matthew Stafford to get up into that group in the AFC. That is, if you don't have one of those cyborg quarterbacks, you're not participating in the AFC right now.
Yeah, here's the best thing I could say about the Steelers. I don't think Russell Wilson will be their starter next year, and I don't think Justin Fields will be their starter either. Right now, I do think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but anytime I throw that out there, people go, can he coexist with Tomlin? Can he coexist with the Rooney family as well in that Steeler culture?
I think those questions are valid. But I think if you look at where Aaron's at in his career, and you look at where Tomlin's at, like we just mentioned, where this success has been unbelievable and nobody's questioning what type of coach he is. He's one of the best coaches in the league. And if he became available, everybody'd be knocking their doors down trying to find a way to get Mike Tomlin. But they are in a position as an organization where TJ Watt's getting older, Minkah Fitzpatrick's getting older. I think the offensive line is actually pretty decent. And Arthur Smith's a pretty damn good offensive coordinator. I think when people say, how could they coexist? You look at where everybody in the situation is right now and go, well, maybe they'll find a way to make it exist, because that's what's best for all of us. And I think if Aaron's looking for a place to play and Matthew Stafford stays put in LA, he wants to finish with a chance to win. That's probably his best chance to win. And it's for the short term. I think Aaron, and everybody included, could make that work. And I do know Aaron has an unbelievable amount of respect for Mike Tomlin, and rightfully so.
And that's the thing also for Aaron. If you're not able to replace Stafford in LA, or you're not able to go to the Steelers, like, where else are you going that, outside of just playing, that you're actually going to want to and go to play at this stage of your career?
I heard in New Orleans there was some buzz about, like, if the Titans move out of one, that he could go to Nashville. He lives there. That was like an odd connection I heard from some people, but you're right, because he's made it pretty clear he'd like this to end the way it did for Brady and end in a different fashion than what he had. And he wants a chance to win. And so you're right. I think the spots are not like overly abundant for him. What I do find interesting with Aaron Rodgers is, if you ask around, I don't think money is all that important, right? I think he's made more money than anybody that's ever played this game, honestly. Like, I don't think he cares about like breaking the bank on this deal. I think fit is important. And does he take a little less to like try to make that team better? I think with Aaron at this point right now, that isn't an insane thing to say.
Talking to James Palmer, what do you think the timeline here is on the Myles Garrett front? I keep on saying by the end of the first round, I think Myles Garrett will be traded.
Yeah, and they're still dug in, and to my understanding, and we're not trading Myles Garrett. I think they would like to sell Myles on, look at how quickly the last two teams that had the number 2 overall pick turned things around. Like, look at what happened in Houston 2 years ago. Look what happened in Washington this past year. Why don't you wait and see? Like, why don't you relax a little bit? We want to keep you. We can maybe turn this thing around a little bit quicker. Right now, I think the difficulties of the trades, honestly, are this. Like, it would benefit them financially to do it after the draft. Like, that helps them salary cap wise in a much different fashion than if they did it before the draft. But how does that help them in compensation? Okay, now we're going to trade them after the draft, and we're going to get picks that now most likely will be worse than they would because they're getting Myles Garrett. So then the picks are going to go down in terms of where they are in the pecking order. So they're in a really interesting spot, as well as there's other pass rushers. Like, there's pass rushers in this draft, and a lot of them. I'm not saying any of them are Myles Garrett by any stretch. But you can go and snag a couple in the draft. You can get one in the draft. I think there's a few teams, like everybody says the Lions, and rightfully so. I think teams are just going to keep calling. What has happened for Andrew Berry is he has the ability right now with Myles Garrett making this public to at least know what the market is. He doesn't have to pick up the phone, but everybody's calling him and telling him exactly what the market is. So he is getting that information. Now, my understanding is they're not calling anybody back. But right now, he does have probably a lot of information on where things stand. I think this thing is like, I think during the draft, we're going to have to really kind of feel it out. And if it gets past that, I think he might be staying.
James Palmer here with us. I wonder, because I said it, hey, I think he's going to go by the end of the first round. I wonder if we overrate that, just because when I talked to Myles Garrett at the Super Bowl, I went into it saying, okay, he says he wants to win, but how strict on that stance is he? Like, would he go to a place in Atlanta where they could make the playoffs, but you're not going to go win a Super Bowl? And I kind of emerged thinking, if you're the Bills, you're the Chiefs, you're the Eagles, you're Buffalo, you go through the Commanders, like some of those teams, those are the teams that have a chance to get him. And all those teams are picking pretty much at the end of the first round anyway.
Yeah.
So does it matter if you then trade him by the first round? Because in all likelihood, all those teams are probably going to be in those late 20s, early 30s anyway this time next year.
I'll just say this. I ran into Deion Dawkins during the Super Bowl week in New Orleans, and he just said, can we please get Myles Garrett? Can we just please? For two reasons. One, the dude's unbelievable. And two, I don't want to play against Myles Garrett because it's just a nightmare doing it. And so that's the way players are thinking. Like, they think he can change your organization like that. And so there are only a handful of teams that probably are in that grouping that you said, but you mentioned where they're picking. Like that's where they're going to pick, and they're probably going to pick even lower once they get Myles Garrett. And so that's the hard part about making that deal. And I think the last part about this is, does Andrew Berry want to be known as the guy who made the worst trade in the history of the league
yeah.
and also traded away Myles Garrett? That's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and if I'm Myles, I'm just saying, what's your plan at quarterback? Because we know Watson's never going to play a snap for them probably ever again, and he could miss all of next year as well. I think people forget about the injury reporting on that, and then it's like, okay, even if Tennessee passes up on a quarterback, I guess that then they would take a quarterback at 2, Cleveland, right, with either Cam or Shedeur sitting there.
Yeah, and they certainly could. And I think Cam probably fits a little bit better just because of the nature of the division, the weather, the cold, the arm strength is probably valued in that division quite a bit. Shedeur would fit the system. I do think that's possible. And honestly, this sounds crazy. Like, they could pick a quarterback and still get Kirk Cousins. They could do both. They really could.
You're going to pay after Kirk what happened
Cousins
with Kirk last year and Michael Penix Jr., nothing would surprise me anymore with what
nothing would surprise me at all. Now there are people in the league that think Kirk can still play. There's people that think another year removed from the Achilles, he's going to be even better. There are people I've talked to in Atlanta that think he just flat out cannot play anymore. And this happens with quarterbacks. Some of them just fall off a cliff. I mean, Peyton Manning's last year, I live in Denver. I covered that team almost that whole year. He threw more picks than he did touchdowns his last year. The injuries kind of in his body being banged up in the neck kind of caught up with him, and he just kind of torpedoed to the ground, sadly, because he's one of the greatest of all time. But this happens with some quarterbacks. And I do think Kevin Stefanski would be able to evaluate that film a lot different than a lot of other people because of their history and because of their relationship. I think he could look at the film with a really educated eye and say, no, he can still play, or no, he can't because he's spent enough time working with Kirk. But they'd only pay him $1.3 million. That's all they'd pay. So you could essentially, if you wanted to, if you were the Browns, you could draft Cam Ward 2nd overall and bring Kirk Cousins in if you wanted to. I mean, I don't know if Kirk's going to make that quarterback room all that pleasurable to be in if he has to go through that again. But that is something you could tell Myles Garrett, hey, guess what? We didn't get 1, we got 2.
Yeah, and Lions, I think I said Buffalo twice. Lions would also be a destination potentially for Myles Garrett as
100%.
well. Wrap it up with James Palmer. Does a great job, senior NFL reporter and insider for Bleacher Report and also Underdog Fantasy. So Darnold, Fields, and Russ. I made predictions on those 3. I'm going to say Sam Darnold to the Raiders, Justin Fields to the Jets, and then Russell Wilson I think was the most difficult one to place. I said Indianapolis, where he battles it out with Anthony Richardson.
That's an interesting one. I don't mind that. I mean, they really do need Anthony Richardson to take snaps, but you need another quarterback as well. I think this is hey man, you're not on scholarship anymore. You got to take some snaps and you got to play because we got to figure this out sooner rather than later. One of the things that makes the Eagles so good is they figure out what they did wrong and they try to fix it immediately. Most teams just sit there too long. But yeah, that's kind of an interesting. I think Sam Darnold to the Raiders makes a lot of sense. And it used to be, and I asked a bunch of executives about this towards the tail end of the season, what are they going to do up in Minnesota? And it was like, you have to bring him back. The locker room loves him. He won 14 games. Like, you're signing him to a long-term deal. It's wild after 2 games, Zach, and time on top of that, how that narrative has shifted dramatically. And you look at where they're at, and this was pointed out to me by somebody else that I thought was really interesting. If they would have drafted better over the last couple of seasons, they'd probably be in a better position to sign Sam Darnold long-term. But they have too many holes in their roster, and they don't have enough cap space. And they have cap space for sure. But if you sign a $40 million quarterback, say on a tag or something, then you don't have the room to do it. It seems more likely that it's going to be he's leaving, and the Vikings are going to say, "Let us know what you're offered, and keep us in the loop, and maybe we can match it." Now, the thing to keep an eye on though is with JJ McCarthy and the weight, to my understanding, and some other things. They love him and they think he can be the guy, but maybe the tag is to drag this out to make sure, JJ McCarthy's good, and then we can tag and trade, or we can do it. I mean, he's a very fascinating one. I think after Stafford, it's Sam Darnold that holds this entire landscape together. But it just seems like there's a lot of things connecting him to the Raiders.
Before we let you run, when you get to Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, I think both guys are in similar spots where there will be games where they still look like a number 1 wide receiver, but there will be a lot more games where they look like a number 2. Both have struggled to stay on the field the last few years. What's the return for both of those guys? The Rams and Niners, when they trade one or, both end up getting traded, what do you think that the target return is going to be for either of those guys?
I think the market's fascinating, Zach, honestly, because the draft doesn't have a whole lot of talent at the receiver spot. The free agent market's not all that great. And so you're looking at a guy like Kupp or Deebo Samuel. I think DK Metcalf could be on the move. I think Kyle Pitts, they're trying to see if they can move him. I'm just talking about, obviously, pass catchers, and since he's a tight end. But 3rd round, 4th round, I think Deebo's contract is difficult. I think that plays a factor into it. But I also think the landscape of the market right now makes some teams that are a little, receiver hungry maybe have to overreach a little bit for what they're looking at, and they will give up a 3rd for Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, you know what? The Higgins situation I think is fascinating, and
yep.
I've heard DK rumored as well. He could probably go for what, a 1st-round pick? You would think, like an AJ Brown type of deal from a few years back.
I don't think so. And this isn't my opinion. This is just I love talking to people that know these positions so well. And one thing with DK that has come up. That was an awesome pro day I was at, by the way. DK and AJ at Ole Miss. I remember being at that pro day. They bursted through the doors, both of them obviously topless, and didn't attend the rest of the pro day. They just ran their routes and came in and destroyed. But if you're not an elite route runner, I was always told this, if you're not an elite route runner, when you start to get up in age, it's a little bit harder to win consistently. DK's still a physical specimen and still is such a mismatch because of his size, but he's not an elite route runner. And he's not a guy that can run a million different routes in the route tree. And so some people in the league believe as age comes along, you don't stay in the league very long like that. That's happened to players that are just bigger bodied, advantage type of guys. And then when push comes to shove down the road, they didn't learn how to play it another way. I don't think DK's viewed as a 1st round type of trade.
How many of these guys get taken care of in Cincinnati? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson. Do you think all 3 get taken care of this offseason?
I think this is the one team we all should be watching. Really. And I mean, Joe Burrow is watching closer than all of us, right? And I think they financially can do it. They can get all of them done. You have to get Jamar Chase done. And that's a record-breaking deal.
Should have got done last year, for being honest.
It 100% should have got done. And what we're waiting on and seeing here, Zach, is if they're going to change the way they do business. Are the Bengals going to finally change the way they do business and play within the same parameters that a lot of these other teams are playing in? You go look at Philadelphia and what Jeffrey Lurie did. He knows the business of television, right? He's been in it. What cutoff year are there a lot of numbers past 29 and 30, 2020 and 2029 and 2030? Why? Because there's another TV rights deal coming up. Philadelphia knows how to move money, and those are games that Cincinnati just doesn't play. And they should have played him last year because the price tag only went up when you become the 6th person ever to win a Triple Crown. It doesn't help you in terms of the negotiations. I think they can get them all done. And I didn't say that in the beginning of in the middle of the year. I thought T. Higgins was certainly gone. I think him having the same agent now as Jamar Chase helps get that done. And I think they can get both of those guys done, specifically on offense, because they realized how unstoppable they are if everybody is healthy. And then the Trey one is, I think they can get it done. It's just a matter of if they change the way they do business. And I think that's what Joe Burrow's really keeping an eye on right now.
Make sure you check him out. Does a great job. Senior NFL reporter and insider for Bleacher Report and Underdog Fantasy. He's our pal, James Palmer. James, appreciate it. Thank you.
You too, buddy. Good seeing you.
Yep, you got it. Right back at you. There he is, James Palmer. A lot to react to. We'll do that on the other side. I think the thing about the wide receiver conversation is the most fascinating. Like, we spend so much time talking about who's going to be the number one overall pick. You know, what's going to happen with Stafford? What's going to happen with Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins? The wide receiver component we really haven't touched on a lot outside of T. Higgins. So it seems like if you want Cooper Kupp, he's there. If you want Deebo Samuel, he's there. But the DK Metcalf one, I thought you had to give up a first for DK. Seems like you're not going to have to. And there's some concerns about DK Metcalf. We'll get into all that when we come on back.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So James Palmer just joined us a few moments ago. He's not sold that Tennessee is going to keep the number one pick. And if they do keep the number one pick, he's not sold that they are going to take a quarterback. You know, he did throw out Abdul Carter, who I think is the best player in this draft. But I do think Tennessee is going to end up taking Cam Ward. Some other things. Stafford, I think that's the leader in the clubhouse right now, is that he stays with the Rams. But if he is going to leave, the Steelers make the most sense. Also, it does feel as if the Steelers are going to be aggressive this offseason. Now, I'm not telling you that they're going to be aggressive in all areas, but when it comes to finding something in the short term at the quarterback position, I don't think this is going to be, throw Justin Fields back out there for a year or throw Russell Wilson back out there for another year. Like, there could be a stopgap guy, but I do think it's going to be a stopgap guy this year that's a little bit more intriguing than what they did last year. And the two names to really look for there are Stafford, if he becomes, well, he is available, but if they actually move on from him with the Rams, and then also Aaron Rodgers. Now, I do wonder, and I don't think they will, but I wonder if Tomlin just says, you know what, let's rip off the Band-Aid. Let's stop trying to find a stopgap guy, and we'll just give a 3 or 4 year deal to Sam Darnold. You know, maybe they end up doing that. I don't think they're going to, but I would say one of those three guys, Stafford, Rodgers, or Darnold, in my opinion, unless they're finding a way to trade up to get into the top 3 of the draft, which I don't know how they would do. But in my opinion, one of those three guys need to be the quarterbacks for the Steelers next year. But you go through all those rumors, right? Rodgers potentially to the Steelers. Stafford, could be on the move. We got into the predictions of Sam Darnold for me to the Raiders. Russell Wilson to the Colts, right, to compete up against Anthony Richardson. And then also Justin Fields, I have him going to the Jets. But I thought from the wide receiving standpoint, right, we're focused on where's Myles Garrett going to get traded? Right, like, could Max Crosby be on the move? What's going to transpire with the quarterbacks in the draft with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, and then also these other quarterbacks, these veterans that are on the market and are available. But wide receivers, we touched upon it. It doesn't seem as if the returns are going to be that lucrative for these wide receivers, for guys that are available and guys that are established in this league. Like Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, I don't even know how we put a value on what the return's going to be. And if Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel could get through a season healthy, they're in between a number 1 and number 2 wide receiver. Now, I don't think when you bring those guys in with the wear and tear on their body, right, the injuries that they suffered in the past, that you're expecting them to play a full season. But I don't think you look at either as long-term options. So if you're a team like, I don't know, Buffalo, and could Buffalo maybe say, all right, we're not going to get Myles Garrett. Maybe Myles Garrett winds up with the Commanders. Maybe he winds up with the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Lions, like one of those other teams. Where do you pivot to make your team better? And last year, right, they tried at the deadline to go get Amari Cooper. They got him. Amari Cooper isn't what Amari Cooper once was. You look around, you got Khalil Shakir there. You got Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid hasn't been worth the first-round pick like many of us thought he was going to be. Keon Coleman, they got him second round, early second round. It's only 1 year. I'm not ready to write him off. But does a team then like Buffalo say, we're not going to have to give up really all that, and we could take the gamble like we did on Amari Cooper on a Cooper Kupp or a Deebo Samuel? And Deebo Samuel actually in the Bills offense would be fun because when Deebo was at his best, it was in that San Francisco offense when he killed you with his legs and they used him as a running back and then they also used him as a wide receiver and then he wanted more money and he eventually got that money. And then also he had a clause put into his contract. He had to pay him more if you have this many carries per year and all that stuff. But if you're Buffalo, let's say, do you really care about the feelings of Deebo Samuel and Cooper Kupp? Right? Like you make that deal, maybe you have those guys for 2 years at most, right? And if they give you 1 year and they're actually able to stay healthy and you go win a Super Bowl, I don't think you care really how you use them. And that's just the business part of it. But the T. Higgins factor, right? I know you got next week is when the deadline for the franchise tag, and they're trying to get a long-term deal done with T. Higgins. If not, then they'll slap the franchise tag on him. Cincinnati, I don't know if they're the most intriguing team this offseason, but they got to be one of. Because that's a team that's been able to defeat Kansas City when it matters a few years ago. Now, last 2 years, they haven't made the playoffs. Slow starts, bad offensive line, Burrow, in and out of the lineup, all that stuff. But you have Trey Hendrickson, who just led the league in sacks. Jamar Chase, who just won the Triple Crown. And then T. Higgins, in a league where you need 2 wide receivers now. And you could pay 2 wide receivers high money. You have T. Higgins, who could be a number 1 wide receiver on a lot of other teams. So are they going to be able to get all 3 of those guys taken care of? They'll definitely, I'd be stunned if they don't get the Jamar Chase contract figured out. Justin Jefferson is the highest paid wide receiver in the league at $35 million. When Jamar Chase signs his new contract, it's going to be north of that $35 million. But then it's, okay, where does T. Higgins fall? And Trey Hendrickson is a little bit older and, right, double-digit sack machine. Can you get him something that's not too long-term but also satisfies what he wants? So they're very intriguing. But I didn't even think about this, and I've heard the rumors before. And I know, right, a few years back he signed that 3-year, $72 million extension, DK Metcalf. But DK Metcalf has been a good wide receiver. I don't think DK Metcalf is viewed as a great wide receiver, but he is a number 1 quality wide receiver in this league. Now, is he CeeDee Lamb? No. Is he Jamar Chase? No. Is he Justin Jefferson? No. Is he Amon-Ra St. Brown? No. But DK Metcalf could go to a lot of teams and be a number 1 wide receiver. And when we were talking about the return, when James Palmer brought it up, I kind of went right to A.J. Brown, right? And even though A.J. Brown now is a better wide receiver than DK Metcalf, but you look at A.J. Brown when he was in Tennessee, he was a very good wide receiver. 1,051 yards, 1,075, 869 yards, 3 years in, 16 games, 14 games, 13 games. And yes, he was younger, obviously, than what DK Metcalf is now when you're trading him. But they got a first-round pick for him. And Tennessee ended up taking Treylon Burks, and they've never been able to replace A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown went from being a good wide receiver to a great wide receiver. Kind of like when Stephon Diggs, who had more success in the league when he got traded from Minnesota, but he was viewed as good, very good, and then he goes to Buffalo, viewed as great. And since getting traded to Philadelphia, we've seen A.J. Brown pop off for 1,500 yards. Basically 2 back-to-back close to 1,500-yard season, 1,496, 1,456. And this year only played in 13 games, but caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl, still was over 1,000 yards, and has been a number 1 wide receiver in this league. So that was worth it for the first-round pick. So when James is throwing out there DK Metcalf, who is a number 1 wide receiver on a lot of places, and he got a year left on the contract, I'm like, hey, how much do you think he's gonna go for? Like, is that an A.J. Brown, a number 1, a first-round pick? And he was like, I don't think so. So you could get a bargain in terms of what you have to trade. Because look, hey, my team knows this better than anybody. When my team takes a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, they suck. They're terrible in the Patriots. So if you're the Patriots, obviously you wouldn't be given the third overall pick in the draft, but would you give your second round pick for DK Metcalf? And then you got to pay him. And that's the question. Should DK Metcalf be getting Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill money? Even Brandon Ayuk money. It's just $30 million a year, Brandon Ayuk. Or is he going to be willing to take that step below, like what a DJ Moore, 27.5, a Jalen Waddle, 28.25, a Devontae Smith, 25? Because if you tell me, hey, I may only have to give a 3 that turns into a 2 or a 2 outright to get DK Metcalf, and I could get away with giving him like a 3-year deal and pay him anywhere between 26 to 28 million, I think there's a lot of teams that'd be willing to make that move for DK Metcalf. Like Michael Pittman Jr. has been really damn good in this league. Not great, but good. He just got a new deal, $23.3 million a year. So I just wonder on DK Metcalf, is this the year that he does get moved because the Seahawks may not want to give him that contract after this year? And then if you're trading a guy with 1 year left on his deal and people don't think he's great, then what the return's going to be. So that was actually my biggest takeaway from the conversation with James Palmer, is that DK Metcalf is available and it doesn't cost you as much as I thought it would cost you to go get DK Metcalf, who's been a solid player in this league. Getting in the league in 2019, 6,324 receiving yards and 48 receiving touchdowns. But now 27, big physical receiver, not the greatest route runner in the world. You probably think that there's 3 more really good years left in DK Metcalf probably. And if I could give him a 3-4 year contract max and not have to give up a first round pick, I could, in a draft where, we question where this is not other drafts where you look at the wide receivers and, just solely based off wide receivers, there's a bunch going in the first round, and maybe a move that is worth and a risk that's worth taking for some of these teams out there. All righty, Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. We'll do a news brief next. Update time first. Here's Zach.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, free agency is right around the corner, and you could add Shaq Thompson's name to the list. The Panthers are not going to renew his contract, so the 8-year veteran, who is now 30 years old, will hit the open market in a couple of days. He was the team's first-round pick back in 2015. The Thunder have an overwhelming 9.5 game lead in the Western Conference, and will try to add to it tonight when they go for their third in a row against the Timberwolves. Memphis and Denver are tied for the second spot in the conference. The latter saw its 9-game winning streak end over the weekend. Michael Malone's team ran into a hot Luka Doncic in the Lakers, and the Lakers, I should say, and he said their defense let them down.
We have to understand that we cannot just rely upon our offense. We average 128 points a game on a 9-game win streak. Tonight we had 100. So when we're not scoring, we're not making shots, what are we going to do? That's when you have to rely upon your defense.
They will take on the Pacers tonight. College action, 4th-ranked Houston host number 10 Texas Tech in a great Big 12 matchup. The Cougars have won 6 in a row. Auburn remains the number 1 team in the nation in this week's poll, followed by Duke, Florida, and Tennessee rounds out the top 5. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on X. Our handle is INF Sports Network. That's INF Sports Network on X.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
I'm surprised it took us this long to mention this. We are an hour and 45 minutes into the show, and it's a gross miscalculation on how we should program a national radio show. Because one of our very own should be the lead story on every national radio program, national TV broadcast, Sports Center, whatever morning shows that you watch. Everyone should be talking about this guy, courtesy of News 12 Long Island, bringing arena football home. Listen up to this newscast.
We're very excited to unveil that we are the New York Dragons.
Fire-breathing football is back in Uniondale. The Dragons of the Arena Football League roamed the old barn from 2001 through 2008. But this is a new team in a new league, and they are ready to put on a show for the fans.
17 years later, to have arena football back at the Coliseum, and to have it be called the New York Dragons is everything to me, so I'm really excited.
We're all excited about this. The team's general manager, Peter Schwartz, says he wants a Long Island head coach and most, if not all, 18 players on the roster to be from Long Island. The season begins in June.
So it's a new Entertainment Football Association Arena Football League. I'm just going to say this. Someone tweeted me during the break, too much football on the show today. There's no such thing in a national radio landscape of too much NFL or too much college football. All these other leagues, the Arena Football League and like the 9,000 new installment of it, what was the Alliance, the AAF, the Alliance of American Football, all the USFL, it's too much. If it's not the NFL, if it's not college football, and, you know, I'll be nice to our friends up north, maybe even Canadian football. But in most part, if it's not NFL or if it's not college football, the odds of it really ever being all that successful are slim to none. But Peter Schwartz, it's a new 4-team league. He is the general manager. Now, I think they said they're looking for 18 players. That's a pretty small roster for football where injuries can occur. So I just wonder how this is going to go. And I'm wondering, I love Pete, but how many times, right, us here in the building are going to be asked to maybe go check out Pete's new Arena Football League team? And do I get free tickets, Peter Schwartz? Because if you expect me to pay for them, that ain't happening. I'm expecting some freebies. I think because we got some big fellas around here, myself, Big Zoo, Marash, Pat Boyle, Pete the Body Bilotti, Pete Hoffman. You know, if they need some beef, Greg Giannotti, like if they need some beef on the offensive line, I wonder if we're going to get asked to try on out. And maybe you could have Boomer be the quarterback, the great Boomer Esiason. But this is so on brand for Peter Schwartz. I love him. But this, like, out of nowhere, new Arena Football League, he's the GM. Now, I don't think he's like, Mike Borgonzi, right, with the Tennessee Titans, right? Like, not that many impactful decisions, but he's probably running the entire show. He's probably got to do ticket sales. He's got to come up with the coach. He's got to come up with the like, who's funding this is my question. And how much money could you make as an offensive lineman or maybe my new body frame, maybe a tight end? Yeah, because I could be interested, Pete. And I don't think I'm going to cost an arm and a leg. So this is fascinating.
They don't really have tight ends in the Arena Football leagues. They have 3 offensive linemen and one kind of becomes eligible.
A big slot receiver. Is that happy for you?
To be honest, the running backs are usually pretty big, so you could be a running back in the Arena leagues because it's usually 7 on 7.
Yeah, just put some chocolate chip pancakes in the end zone. I'll run for a bunch of touchdowns.
Here are the 4 teams in the Entertainment Football Association.
You actually looked this up. I'm impressed. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's the New York Dragons, as we've discussed.
Yes.
The New Jersey Ciphers.
Okay.
The Fitchburg Heroes.
Who?
Exactly. And the Danbury Diesel. I guess Danbury, Connecticut in the house.
Yeah, you got those goons back in Danbury? That's a great, by the way, you want to watch the Danbury Thrashers or whatever it was? Unbelievable hockey documentary that you got to watch. So Peter Schwartz is the new GM. I'm telling you, this is Pete's dream. Because Pete used to broadcast the actual Dragons games with Aaron Garcia. He used to do those broadcasts with Sid Rosenberg, who's now like a big political talk show host. But that's what Pete used to do. He used to call those games. So I wonder who their next head coach is going to be. And will his son be the long snapper? That's my question. All righty. Maybe you get Badlands Booker, who I once saw Peter Schwartz's son long snap donuts into Badlands Booker's mouth. Maybe he could be the nose tackle, Badlands Booker, for this upcoming team. Let's get to J.J. Redick. He has an interesting message to Luka Doncic.
I told him this morning that I want at least one blackout episode where he's screaming indiscriminately at no one in particular because he's excited. Like that means he's back. That's the Luka I know, the killer.
I didn't did he say he wanted like one blackout, like screaming, going nuts? I thought he meant box out at first. So he actually played like some defense and actually have some effort if it's not shooting the basketball. Okay, that's interesting. And he definitely had a moment last night where you could scream and have a bunch of elation because that was a tremendous victory up against the Denver Nuggets. Kyrie Irving on facing Luka Doncic for the first time since the trade. This is going to be coming up tomorrow evening.
Being a former team, of Luka's, obviously the narrative's already written. I don't know what else I could really add to that. I'm pretty much focused and telling my guys just to focus on the high-level game that we got to win. I would love to get into the motions after the game with you, but before the game, it's just about having fun and making sure that we lock in and have a deep focus. They're going to come in, and be ready to play against us. Luka's obviously going to have a lot of confidence. That game, he played well last game, so he's feeling good, and we just got to be aware of it.
I would respect Kyrie more if he was just like, he got traded, I'm leaving after this year, bleep the GM, and this whole thing's a disgrace. I would like an honest Kyrie Irving there. NBA, what's that account where you get Centel? What is it?
NBA Centel?
Yeah. So I saw that they put out a fake report, and the game's in LA anyway, that the Mavericks won't let you wear a Luka Doncic jersey to the game, which would be believable if the game was in Dallas. Certain talk show host got by that. Not me. Another national name. Colin Cowherd got by that. I just saw that as an awful announcing headline during the break. And finally, the new GM of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Duval, James Gladstone, had an emotional message at the end of the Jaguars introductory press conference.
To the Jaguar fan base, I turn to you. With Liam's vision, with a disciplined approach, we're going to bring you a product that you all can be proud of. And we are so appreciative of your support. With that, game on.
You got one guy crying like he just lost a loved one, and the other guy was doing stand-up comedy, gone bad.
Duval.
Liam Cohen and James Gladstone. This is the dream team. If I had to take a guess on who's going to be the first head coach for Peter Schwartz's new Arena League football team, he wanted someone with like a Long Island background. Wayne Corbett went to Hofstra, and Peter has a lot of connections with the Jets. I'll say Wayne Corbett's going to be the first head coach of the new version of the New York Dragons, led by general manager Peter Schwartz. That's going to be interesting.
Assistant coach Marquise Colston.
Willie Colon coaching the offensive line. Bunch of New York hog mollies. All righty, Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
All righty, hour number 3 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. You know, if Doug Gottlieb can coach college basketball and host his radio show, I think I should be able to play in this new Arena Football League that Peter Schwartz, our very own Peter Schwartz, is the GM for. You know, I could see myself being a linebacker, a defensive end, a right tackle, you know, a hybrid receiver, kind of tight end. You know, I could see me being a part of this league and then also still hosting the radio show each and every day. I wonder what the salary is, by the way. I'll tell you this, I couldn't give up this job to go play at Peter Schwartz's Arena Football League, but I didn't realize this. The guys behind the glass, Samter and Stu, are Arena Football League savants. Samter, you worked for an Arena Football League, right? In a team in Arizona. Was that when it was like the actual Arena Football League that I grew up in? I thought it was actually fun going to as a kid because you could get so close. If a football goes into the stand, you got to keep it. But that's when arena football was actually arena football. When I remember, my most vivid memory was Aaron Garcia quarterbacking the New York Dragons, which now Peter Schwartz has basically, since that team is dead, taken that name, the Dragons, and he was a part of their broadcast team. And now he's going to basically be the GM in this new 4-team league that will probably last a year. And then, unfortunately, I love Pete, but this is just the reality of how I think about it. I can't imagine that business is going to be booming here. I'm even surprised it's able to get off the ground. And by the end of the year, that league is going to be one and done. You know, it's going to be like a great college basketball player.
Yeah, because even the big league, the initial one was the Arena Football League, the AFL.
How many times did it go away?
It went away, and like even the Rattlers, who are one of the like OGs of the Arena Football League, like, and you think about Kurt Warner and the Iowa Barnstormers.
Bon Jovi had a team in Philly with Ron Jaworski.
He did. It was the Soul, I think the Philadelphia Soul. But even the Arizona Rattlers, they're in a new league called the Indoor Football League because the AFL folded for like the 4th time, and now they've kind of come back. I know you remember we had the story a few months ago where it came back and it signed a deal with ESPN. And then like a week before the first game, they ended up like going away again and like losing the broadcast deal.
Or what was the league? It was some indoor football league that
Antonio Brown was a part owner of the Albany team.
No,
and like
there was one recently where they played their championship. There's so many of them, I forget. They played at the American Dream, and we had, I think Billick was in studio. I want to say was doing some. Oh no, Jeff Fisher was doing work promoting this league, and then Peter Schwartz was like helping him out. And then right before no one was getting paid, and then they found the way that the game did go on, and they have it. So I remember when I forget which. I think it was either the USFL or it was the Alliance. And that was a little bit different because that was actually on like Fox. Oliver Luck was the commissioner and he was in studio all the time. So you have all these different leagues, but what did you exactly do? Were you basically like what Peter Schwartz is doing for the old Arena Football League for the team out in Arizona?
In a sense, at the time, our head coach was kind of our GM. His name was Kevin Guy. Great guy. He's won like 8 arena indoor championships in different levels. And at a certain point...
a legend to Peter Schwartz.
he's a legend of the arena leagues. I'll tell you that. Kevin Guy is an absolute legend. Mm-hmm. But then Danny White, former Cowboys quarterback, became our general manager. He was the old Rattlers coach in the 90s. Then he coached the Utah team. Then he came back to be our GM. So when Danny came over, I kind of lost some of my responsibilities. But that first year that I was there, I was basically in charge of everything. I handled the interns. I handled the video at the games. I handled transportation for the players. I helped handle the contracts. Contracts were very easy because it was literally a standard boilerplate
we got
contract.
No money. Take it or leave it.
It was basically like every player gets this amount of money, and then you're allowed to designate 3 players who get X amount of money plus a little bit extra.
Yeah.
So your quarterback and like your top 2 players.
If you maybe had like a big college name that had his NFL career flame out real quickly, you're able to go bring him in.
100%. So there was no negotiation. For me, it was more just like getting the contract signed and then filing them away properly.
Did you have to double dip and also be the mascot? Just wondering.
No. Our mascot's name was Fang. He was an old biker dude who would ride onto the field on a Harley wearing like a leather vest.
You could have done that.
Yeah, and he would dance with the Sidewinders, who were our cheerleading staff. And the Sidewinders were oftentimes like the Phoenix Suns cheerleaders also. And it was a lot of fun.
That's crazy. And Stu, you had experience in one of these Fakakta Arena Football League teams?
Yeah, I worked for the Trenton Freedom of the PIFL, which I believe no longer exists.
Yeah, I think that was like me. If it's the same league I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it probably is.
Because I was doing local radio in Trenton at the time. They're like, we got this new Arena Football League. Can we get in studio? We want to talk to your audience. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. We put whoever on back then. And I think it was 2 years, and then all these
I think
leagues,
2 years, and then it went away.
They end up not being able to make any money, and then people that funded the leagues either get caught up in something in a corrupt way, or they're just like, hey, we're not going to give you any more money. You meet some fascinating people in these leagues, because really, like, let's be realistic and call it for what it is. It's all these people, right, that are playing, and I think that's the cool part of all these leagues. If you've only known football your entire life, like whether you played high-level college football or lower-level college football, or if maybe you tried out in the NFL and you didn't get in, and you know nothing but football for the rest of your, for your life so far, at least it still gives you an avenue to still scratch that itch. And even though you're not going to be making a ton of money, be able to extend your career for a little bit. But everybody else associated with it, it's either retired people that were associated with the NFL, failed football people, or it's people that would have no business running an NFL or a college program, right? And this is their dream. This is their baby, and they have the time. And it's, oh, I get to be the GM, where you're not as if you're running the Raiders, but you're running this team that only has three other teams in the league, and you basically have to do everything. And you meet a lot of characters. Like Peter Schwartz, a good dude. Let me be clear. But there's a lot of characters in this league where it gives you a lot of little league energy, where everyone knows that little league kind of coach when you're playing as a kid, who's the dad is kind of a sleazeball, and he's coaching as if this is the Yankees, right, in the early 2000s and the late 90s, right? And he's trying to live out his glory days. So that's pretty much what one of these leagues are like. So I'll be curious. I'm not going to say I'm going to go. But if Peter wants me to play for the team, I'd be more than happy. I was talking to Marash during the break, because I guess Marash had all the gossip and the scuttlebutt on this. Supposedly Marash's flag football team, you know how Marash claims he's like this big athlete because he won like a Long Island flag football championship, which is basically just his beer buddies flag football league. Supposedly one of the guys on that team got asked to be a part of Peter Schwartz's Arena Football League team. So that's the scouting pool. So if you just need someone that could drink a lot of beer and eat a lot of food, I think I would be a great candidate to be one of the 18 spots on Peter Schwartz's new Arena Football League team. And I could give him an incredible amount of publicity, basically doing the Doug Gottlieb role, except I'm not coaching, I'd be playing, where you give him 3 hours of publicity each and every day.
How would you feel about being mic'd up during games live and broadcasting while you're blocking the defensive lineman?
Yeah, not only that, I would become the biggest cancer on the team. There is no doubt about it. I would be so selfish. I would think I'm like Antonio Brown, Terrell Owens, whichever one of these loudmouth wide receivers that always cause problems. I would be the most selfish player in this league, because I would be playing for clicks, all right? I'm not playing to actually be a great football player. I would just be playing to make the most amount of news possible for this league. So I'd be like the Dylan Brooks of this league. I wouldn't be any good, but I would create a lot of drama and create a lot of headlines.
The not overly ostentatious arena of the New York Dragons. Live.
Hey, defensive end, you suck. I'm going to pancake your ass. All righty. Let's do a little onside offside right now. Stu's got some questions for me. I got some answers. We'll get to it right now.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb.
Do you remember, Samter, the he hate? I think it was the XFL, the he hate me. It was Rod Smart. My jersey would be I hate you, and just show up to the games. Or maybe I could just wear he hate me because Peter Schwartz ripped off the Dragons name. Maybe then I could just rip off the whole he hate me stuff. But good luck with the team, Pete. You could call my agent, call Lep, if you want to get this taken care of. And I don't think my negotiations will be that crazy, and I would be honored to be one of the 18 chosen members for the new New York Dragons. Would be fun for the season that it's going to last. All righty. Stu, what do you got cooking here for onside offside?
All right, so the Cowboys finished 7-10 after Dak Prescott went down and missed 9 games, but expect their quarterback to be healthy for 2025. However, both backups, Cooper Rush and Trey Lance, are likely to leave the team, and Executive Vice President Stephen Jones made an interesting admission to the Dallas Morning News, saying, quote, "One of our goals is to get a young quarterback in the draft," end quote. And that is, of course, to back up Dak Prescott. So, onsides, offsides, the Cowboys will draft a quarterback before the 4th round.
I don't think they'll draft a quarterback in the 1st round or a 2nd round. When you say before the 4th round, that means it's got to be at least the 3rd round, right? It's not like 4th round or lower, right?
Yes, 3rd, 2nd, or 1st.
So this is the thing. I think 2 are going to go in the 1st round. Shador Sanders and Cam Ward. I don't think either will be there when the Cowboys are picking. They're in at 12. Who's that third quarterback? A lot of people say it's Jackson Dart. The Cowboys using pick 44 on Jackson Dart. Maybe they're going to try to channel their inner Philadelphia Eagles like what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts. I guess it's a possibility. And then the Cowboys pick at 76. Do I think the Cowboys are going to use a third-round pick or a second-round pick on a quarterback? I do not. But I think when you get to their next pick at 148, and they have 148, 168, 170, 171. I do think one of those 4 picks will be used on a quarterback, but it won't start to the 4th round. And how much do they really value the backup quarterback position? Like, they brought in Trey Lance. They never really gave him a chance. Cooper Rush has had some starts throughout the years. But I don't think they're going to make a big move for a quarterback, which would be 2nd round or earlier. But your question is, the Cowboys will draft a QB before the 4th round. I'm going to go offsides because I think it will start in the 4th round.
Offside.
Speaking of the Cowboys, one of the quarterbacks that the Cowboys are known to like in the draft is Shedeur Sanders. While some believe he'll go in the top 3, some scouts and team executives believe he shouldn't go in the 1st round. Now, Shedeur has announced that he will not partake in any drills other than interviews at the Combine. Onside offside, Shedeur is making a mistake not doing any of the drills at the Combine.
If you don't know what Shedeur Sanders is capable of at this point, that's on you. Do I need to see him go throw in shorts and a T-shirt when he's just going to basically do it again at his pro day in Boulder, Colorado? I do not. I think the measurements here are the biggest part, and also just getting in front of teams and talking to them. So I don't think Shedeur Sanders, by not doing these drills, is going to hurt his draft stock. He's still going in the top 10 picks. He's probably going to go at latest 6 or 7. So I don't think he needs to do them. And I saw Ashton Genty's not doing so. I saw Cam Ward's not doing so. So I don't have a big issue with this. So Shedeur Sanders is making a mistake by not doing any drills at the Combine. I don't think so. Offside.
Offside. The NFL clearly has to fix the onside kick rule that currently states that teams have to declare before they attempt one. One of the possible rule changes is the XFL's onside play, which makes teams convert a 4th and 15 if they want the ball back. Onsides, offsides, you like the idea of an onside play?
I do not. 4th and 15 seems too easy. I understand it's not a gimme, but if you're telling me I have a chance to get the ball back if I just convert a 15-yard pass on a 4th and 15 compared to kicking it, right? I think it's a lot easier to go on out there and convert a pass on 4th and 15, especially with how much we throw the football. And remember, most easier to be occurring end of games where the defenses are gassed anyway. So I do not like this. I know that this is not a popular thing, but the NFL picks and chooses when they're very selective when they care about player safety. And it's kind of funny to me. In college, they have the regular kickoff rule, and nobody gives a crap. But in the NFL, we gotta factor in player safety. But we may add another regular season game. But don't worry, we're taking that preseason game, so that's how we could justify it. I would just go back to doing kickoffs the way that they always were. And you could onside kick whenever. You line up the kickoffs. If you want to change how you line up guys on the left side and the right side, fine. But I think the NFL has done too much to the kickoff. I really do. So I do not like this idea. I would just go back to how kickoffs used to be when I was growing up. So you like the idea of an onside play? I do not. Offside.
Offside.
Speaking of rule changes, an unnamed team that has now been revealed to be the Green Bay Packers, according to reports.
Go, Pack, go!
So the Pack have submitted a proposal to eliminate the tush push, a play made famous by Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, but used often as well by Josh Allen and the Bills. Onsides, offsides, the NFL should do away with the tush push.
Absolutely not. Look back at the AFC Championship game. The Bills couldn't run that play to save their life. They couldn't. And the Eagles, right, they run it to perfection, but not everyone runs that play perfectly. So the NFL should do away with the tush push. I'm sorry, folks. I don't think you should. And I think this is just a lot of bitching from the Packers. Oh, we lost to them twice. We lost to the Eagles twice, so now we got to get rid of the tush push. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's loser energy. So the NFL should do away with the tush push. Offside.
Offside.
Adrian Wojnarowski was one of the best insiders in any sport before announcing his retirement to join his alma mater, St. Bonaventure, as their GM.
And that's an actual GM.
That's right.
Peter Schwartz and Adrian Wojnarowski, a little bit different.
Now,
sorry.
Now Woj is reportedly auctioning off the phones that he used to break Woj bombs to raise NIL money for the Bonnies. Onsides, offsides, you would buy one of Woj's phones.
Yeah, I saw it was phones and like press passes. Now, I'm assuming when you get Adrian Wojnarowski's phone, it's not coming with all the contacts and all the pictures, right? And all the behind the scenes kind of text messages, right? If that's the case, that'd be interesting. But if you're just getting a wiped out Adrian Wojnarowski phone, oh, here's his iPhone that he broke the Paul George news about, who gives a flying bleep? Who would buy that in their right mind? I love Woj, but I'm not spending a penny on that phone unless if it's got all your contacts and all the behind the scenes information. So would I buy one of Woj's phones? I'm assuming that it's going to be wiped out, so absolutely not. Offside.
Offside.
This great piece of history. It's a wiped out Adrian Wojnarowski iPhone. On this phone is where he broke the news on where Kyrie Irving was going to be playing basketball. Like, who gives a flying
Probably
crap?
also doesn't work considering he was on it for like 20 hours a day.
Yeah, that's probably true. All right, next one.
The Sixers, they are having their worst season in nearly a decade.
No, they suck.
And after losing their 7th straight on Saturday, they fell to 20-36 and are now 12th in the East. And to make matters worse, superstar Joel Embiid, who has been a shell of himself as he battles a lingering knee injury, now he and the team are exploring options to heal the knee that could include season-ending surgery. Onsides, offsides, it's time for the Sixers to blow it up and trade Joel Embiid this offseason.
I felt that way last year. I think Daryl Morey, by the way, is such an overrated general manager. I was out on Daryl Morey when he was with the Houston Rockets, and he was like, oh, we lost to the Golden State Warriors, but at least we beat them like a time or two in the series, and our record's better than everybody else in the postseason, up against the Golden State Warriors. So I think this just needs a massive reset. You got Maxey, who's still a really good young player when he's healthy. But I think it's the end of the road for Joel Embiid. I would just try to trade him and get the most back that you can at this point because you're not winning the championship with him. You're not even getting to a conference final with him with the way that this has worked out in Philadelphia. So it's time for the Sixers to blow it up and trade Embiid this offseason. I think it's way past time. I've been saying this since last year. So onsides.
All right, last one. The Knicks are 3rd in the East, but they can't seem to beat the top teams in the conference or in the league. After an embarrassing 37-point loss to the number 1 seeded Cavs on Friday, the Knicks followed that up with a 13-point loss to the number 2 Celtics yesterday, and that included a 21-point halftime deficit.
Yeah, it was crazy how quickly they were out of those games.
Yeah, not good. So the Knicks in total now 0-7 against the league's top 3 teams. That, of course, Cleveland, Boston, and Oklahoma City. Onsides, offsides, you still consider the Knicks as a serious NBA title contender?
No, so I usually do this in like Super Bowls, NBA, NHL, right? Whatever sport, Major League Baseball. I don't know, right? You could have more than 3. But if you look at the conferences or the leagues that they're in, I say usually the top 3 in each conference, right, is who I view as the serious title contenders. Now, I understand you could still get to a title, not be viewed as a top 3 team, but in the East now, in no order, it has to be the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Bucks. Those, to me, are the 3 in the East. And it's not the Knicks right there after they got smacked around by not only the Cavs, but then they followed it up. All right, give a good effort up against the Celtics, right? If they would have, lost at the end, a buzzer beater, okay, a little moral victory. But they got smacked around by the Celtics, too. So I still consider the Knicks a serious NBA title contender. Right now, no way, Jose. Offside.
Offside.
All righty, that will do it for an onside offside on a Monday. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will take a break. When we come on back, how do we think it's going to be mocked after this week in the NFL Combine when it comes to the first 2 picks of the NFL Draft with the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns? I have a thought. I'll give you that thought when we come on back.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
What should the Tennessee Titans do with the number 1 pick? Trade the pick, draft Travis Hunter, draft Abdul Carter, or take a quarterback, whether it's Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Final poll results here, which you could always find at Zach Gelb or at INF Sportsnet on Twitter. Make sure you follow both. Trade the pick is the winner with 44.7% of the vote. Then 26% say draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. 16.3% say draft Abdul Carter. And 13% say draft Travis Hunter. So, Stu, after the combine comes and goes, what do you think most people, or what do you think you will be predicting the Tennessee Titans to do? Do you think they'll take a quarterback? Do you think they'll draft Abdul Carter? Do you think they'll draft Travis Hunter? Or do you think that they're going to end up trading the pick?
I think we are going to be talking about them trading the pick.
Okay. Samter, how about yourself here? When it comes to Tennessee with the first pick after the combine, what kind of mindset are you going to be with Tennessee? What are you going to be predicting them to do, in your opinion?
I think they're going to try to trade the pick, but kind of like what James Palmer said, there's not this need for anybody to give up the farm for Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So I don't think that they're going to be offered enough to make that trade. So I think they'll end up taking it, keeping it, and I think they're going to go Cam Ward.
Okay, I'm with you. I think they'll sniff around. I do think that they're going to try to see what is out there for the number 1 overall pick, and whether it's calling Cleveland. But it gets tricky, right? If you call Cleveland and you give them that idea, hey, we're not going to take a quarterback, we're open to trading the pick. You fall back to 2. Could they still get a quarterback at 2 and then get something else? Or maybe they go Abdul Carter, maybe they go Travis Hunter. It's a possibility. But I really do believe that if you're going to make Cleveland make a deal, and right, we've seen before, remember when the Bears gave up that unnecessary capital to get to number 2, to move up past the 49ers. The 49ers, I think, took Solomon Thomas, and then the Bears took Trubisky, right? Remember when that happened? So, it can't happen where it's only moving a spot, but you're going to need either the Jets or the Raiders to be super duper aggressive. And also, them being super aggressive, yes, it would push you back to 6 or 7, but I bet you it would give you more in return. But maybe that Tennessee will take a little bit less because you would only be falling back 1 spot, and you could still get a difference maker, and then who kind of Cleveland's going to take. So I do think that Tennessee is going to sniff around. I don't think they will get as rich of a return as they want or as they desire. And ultimately, I do believe that they're going to zero in on taking Cam Ward with the first overall pick. Now, I do wonder what kind of way people are going to be talking about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders after this week. They're not really doing anything at all. I think Shedeur sometimes gets an unfair rap. I really do. Just because I think people try to make Shedeur Sanders to be someone that he isn't, where they always throw drama his way. And don't get me wrong, the dude does a great job marketing himself. He does a great job playing for the cameras. But I do believe that Shedeur Sanders is kind of more of an old school quarterback than what people actually think he is. But in terms of just right on the surface, I do think there's more of a risk with Shedeur than I do think Cam Ward. And even though Cam Ward, right, is very confident, and right, you got to be one of these alphas and you got to be one of these confident players, I think that most people are going to view Cam Ward as more safe than Shedeur Sanders. Because think about it. If Shedeur goes to Tennessee, if Shedeur goes to Cleveland, if Shedeur goes to the Jets, or if Shedeur goes to the Raiders or even the Giants, right? Look at those 5 teams. There's always going to be that talk about, hey, would Deion eventually coach his son one day? And if you're a current GM or head coach, I don't think that's how you should make a decision. But if you're looking at what separates the 2 quarterbacks, I just think that unintentional, lesser drama with Cam Ward and Cam Ward being the bigger quarterback is what's going to propel him to going before Shedeur Sanders. I really, both, have won with less. Both have done more with less. When you look at the HBCU that Shedeur was with, Miami, Cam Ward didn't really have all that much at Miami. And then clearly, I know he had Travis Hunter at Colorado, but look at what Shedeur Sanders was able to do, even though he wasn't viewed as the best player in Colorado, because that was Travis Hunter. He was their most valuable player at Colorado. And if, let's just say, hey, Shedeur gets drafted by Tennessee, well, the clock's ticking for Callahan. Within 2 years, right, he could be out, and then there's going to be all that talk about Coach Prime going to coach his son. If he goes to the Giants, Brian Dable's already in the hot seat. If he goes to Cleveland, Stefanski's won Coach of the Year twice, but you missed the playoffs another year or 2, you could be out of a job. The Raiders, Pete Carroll, he's on borrowed time here, right? Probably only 3 years, you're thinking. And the Jets are in this cycle where they're hiring a new coach anyway every 3 years. So where Shedeur lands to me is fascinating for many reasons, but also when he goes to that spot in the first 7 picks, whether it's Tennessee, whether it's Cleveland, whether it's the Giants, whether it's the Raiders or the Jets, what is the time clock on the head coach? And I've said that when people would say in this offseason, hey, Shedeur is going to wind up playing with Deion next year. And I'm like, no. I said Shedeur is going to go someplace, and then that's when the clock starts ticking for the year after his rookie season on when Deion can eventually leave Colorado and maybe link up with his son. Right? That's something that I've been throwing out there. So ultimately, I do think Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 overall pick. I do think Tennessee is going to take him. If they don't, I think it's then going to be either they trade the pick or it ends up being Abdul Carter. I do not think Travis Hunter is going to be the first overall pick. But the earliest I think Travis Hunter could go is 2. And if, let's say I'm right, that Cam Ward does go 1, Cleveland then has a decision. Do you trade the pick? If maybe a team's looking to go get that other quarterback in Shedeur Sanders, do you draft Abdul Carter or do you draft Travis Hunter? And if you're Cleveland, and I think that, by a slight margin, Abdul Carter is the best player in this draft over Travis Hunter, then I think Mason Graham's the third best player in this draft. If you're Cleveland and hey, Myles Garrett wants out. Myles Garrett no longer wants to be here. Wouldn't you trade Myles Garrett to whomever? You get 2 extra first-round picks, right? I think, Myles Garrett at least is going for 2 first-round picks. And then, just from an optics standpoint, you can replace him. Not that I'm saying Abdul Carter is going to be Myles Garrett. But Abdul Carter, this is his first year playing at that position. Going full-time defensive end. And the dude had, 20-something tackles for loss and 12 and a half sacks or whatever it was. I forget what the exact numbers are, but he had double-digit sacks and he had 20-something tackles for loss. That was his first year being a full-time edge rusher and not just being an off-ball linebacker. So I think as long as Abdul Carter doesn't go 1, it does make a ton of sense for Cleveland, where even though it may not be the most exciting pick, but I think it would be the best pick to go get Abdul Carter. But if you're looking for excitement, if you're looking for a player that, in Cleveland, where Deshaun Watson didn't work, Nick Chubb is towards the end of his road, Amari Cooper is no longer there. Myles Garrett's on his way out. You got the good corner in Denzel Ward. You could have one side covered by Denzel Ward, the other side covered by Travis Hunter, and then, by the way, Travis Hunter could go give you 15 to 20 snaps on the offensive side of the ball as well, and you improve that wide receiving room. Now, you still have no one throwing the football, but maybe if you go get Kirk Cousins on when he becomes available in free agency, once the Falcons get rid of him with Stefanski, maybe that's how you could, I'm not going to say do a quick fix, but you can improve your team, because a quick fix is you're going from down and out to the playoffs, but you could improve your team and at least have it be a more watchable product coming up this season. So, long answer here, but ultimately I think after the combine, in most of these mock drafts, I do believe Cam Ward's going to be the first overall pick. I'm curious to see then who's going to be 2, but I think it's going to be Abdul Carter if Tennessee and Cleveland stay put. And then the Patriots, or the Giants would be in at 3. And I think the Giants in at 3 are going to then probably take Shedeur. And then the Patriots become fascinating. Because you could take the tackle out of LSU and Will Campbell, or if Travis Hunter's there at 4, and I think he's the second best player in the draft, are the Patriots really going to pass on Travis Hunter? I wouldn't. I would go find the lineman somewhere else. I know we had debates a few years back, right? When it was the Bengals, should they take Penei Sewell? Should they take Jamar Chase? I would go take the skill position player there, and you got Christian Gonzalez. I know, right? Travis Hunter's more than just a skill position player, but you have Christian Gonzalez, who's an excellent young corner on one side. You could put Travis Hunter on the other, and then Travis Hunter would instantly, not that he'd be a number 1 wide receiver, but he would, because I don't think he's going to be able to play in college how he does in the NFL. But he would instantly become the Patriots' best wide receiving option and best offensive weapon outside of the quarterback in Drake May. So I kind of think that's how it's going to go. Where 1, it's going to be Cam Ward. 2, Browns, Abdul Carter. 3, I do think the Giants are going to wind up with Shedeur Sanders, unless if they find a way for Stafford or one of these other quarterbacks out there. And then 4 is going to be intriguing to me. But right now, if I was making that mock draft, I would then put Travis Hunter in at 4. All right, this is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Loved a lot of what I saw in college basketball this past weekend. When we come on back, we'll talk a little Bruce Pearl. We'll talk about John Shire at Duke. And also, one of my favorite coaches ever got one program rolling. And it's awesome to see. We'll get into all that. We'll end the show out with some college basketball when we come on back. Update time first. Here's Zach.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Now, the upcoming meeting at the competition committee, one NFL team submitted a proposal to ban the tush push. So the rugby style like play could be something of the past, depending on how everything plays out. Free agency is around the corner. Shaq Thompson will hit the open market. The 8-year veteran will not have his contract picked up by the Carolina Panthers. The Thunder have an overwhelming 9.5 game lead in the Western Conference. They will try to hang on to it tonight when they go for their third in a row against the Timberwolves. College basketball, Houston is gearing up for another tournament run. The Cougars come in at number 4 this week in the AP poll and will host Texas Tech tonight, which is 10th in the nation. Kelvin Sampson has led his team to the Sweet 16 twice in the last 5 years, the Elite 8 once, and the Final Four once as well. This team has been on a roll, winning 19 of 20, and for all the attention paid to the SEC this season, Sampson said the Big 12 is right there.
It's just doing what they've always done. This is my 14th year coaching in the Big 12. I don't see it any different than it always has been. It's always good. It always has outstanding coaches, great fan bases, and great tradition-rich programs.
However, Auburn remains the number 1 team in the nation. I'm Rich Jacob.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh, my God, we're back again.
Alrighty, it's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Stephen Wichita says, Zach, if you had one pick right now to win the NCAA championship in basketball, who would it be? You could submit a question by tweeting at INF SportsCenter or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag #AskThePros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. If I only had one pick, you know what? I would actually go Duke. I would take Duke. I like Shire a lot. Cooper Flagg, we know. It's either going to be him or Janai Broome as the player of the year in college basketball. I do think Auburn is the most deep team in the country. And I kind of like that Auburn last year with the guys that have returned, won the SEC, had that great moment of elation, and then in the first round, they ended up losing to Yale, and they got outplayed by Yale. You know, I'm not directly comparing it to Virginia with UMBC, right? Because that was a 16-1, and the next year Virginia got back into the tournament, and they ended up winning it all. But those redemption stories I like a lot. And, hey, if you want to talk about coaches that have not won a championship, that are right in line to go win a championship, what else is Bruce Pearl, right, have left to accomplish in his career? He has won the SEC, I think, twice, right? The conference tournament twice at Auburn. Has exceeded all expectations. Took Auburn to the Final Four a few years back, for crying out loud. And we know what he's done in previous stops as well, and the unfortunate ending, right, with everything that did go down at Tennessee. When he was at Southern Indiana, right, he did win a Division II national championship, took Milwaukee to the Sweet 16. You want to look at a guy, you know, at Tennessee, he took him to an Elite Eight. And then so far at Auburn, he's been there now from 2014 to 2015. This is a dude that was in a Final Four in 2019, and then at Auburn. That's the farthest Auburn's ever gone is to the Final Four. He has won not only one, but two SEC tournament championships, and we've seen him just at Auburn win 2 regular season titles as well. So that's a guy that I would like to see Bruce Pearl in this great redemption story, right? Bruce Pearl win it all this year, but something's just telling me that Duke's going to win it all. And I know Duke, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, where a few weeks ago, right, earlier in the month, they lose to Clemson. Clemson, I saw in the AP poll, they're up to 13 today. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world where later on in the year, you end up dropping a game and it kind of resets things. And I know, right, Illinois doesn't have Kofi Coburn anymore, Ayo Dosunmu, when they played the other night at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. But just to see the way that Duke ran them off the court 110-67 was very, very, very big, I thought. So I would say Duke right now, but if it's not Duke, I know it's right. It's the 1 and 2 team in the country. I just reversed the order. But Auburn, man, that team is just so deep. And look what they've done the last week. All right, their 2 losses on the year are to Duke and are to Florida. Both are in the top 5 right now. Top 3, if you think about it. Because Florida's 3 and Duke is 2, and then Auburn is 1. So those are the 2 losses for the Tigers this year. They lost 90-81 to Florida on February 8th, and then early in the year on December 4th, they lost 84-78 to Duke. But just in the last week, you had 1-2, right? We had Bruce Pearl on last week, where you saw Auburn beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Then they followed it up beating Calipari's team, and I know that's not a great Arkansas team. And then, not that we're going to jump for joy, but they just beat Georgia too. And you just see their depth, really, in the span of a week to have all 3 of those victories, and also to beat Bama and have all the elation 1-2 and not to have a letdown up against Arkansas and Georgia is big. And you'll see Auburn back in action coming up on Wednesday, where they'll play Ole Miss. Then on Saturday, March 1st, they'll be at Lexington, up against Kentucky. And then they got at A&M, and then they play Bama again. So the SEC has been unbelievable this year. But the new top 25 did come out today. Auburn 1, Duke 2, Florida 3, Houston ended up coming up in 4th, Tennessee 5, Alabama 6, the Johnnies in at 7, Michigan State with Izzo at 8, Iowa State, the Cyclones at 9, and then Texas Tech in at number 10. But how about Rick Pitino, man? Last year they got screwed. They should have been in the NCAA tournament, if we're just being honest. But so far this year, for St. John's to be 7th in the country, I don't know if there's a more badass coach in the country in college basketball than Rick Pitino. And I know they did the whole Godfather thing on the broadcast yesterday as St. John's just embarrassed UConn. Just absolutely dominated them with an 89-75 victory. And that game was over at halftime, if we're just being real. I'm annoyed still. So in New York, you can't bet New York college teams. And yesterday I looked at, when I was getting ready to watch the UConn St. John's game, and I thought I was going to be able to go, and I just couldn't make it. I looked at that spread, and I said, St. John's laying 4.5. I thought that spread, because UConn, right, they're back-to-back national champions. They always have the mega brand. We know that. Going into yesterday, they're an 18-8 basketball team, and we've seen UConn recently lose to Seton Hall. All right, Seton Hall is not good. I know their coach was the coach at St. Peter's. I had lunch right next to him, Shaheen Holloway. I had lunch with him before the start of the college basketball season in the summer. He was at Carbone. And I right here in the city, 5 minutes away. I look over, that's Shaheen Holloway. Very nice guy. He's been on the show before. But Seton Hall is having a terrible season. I don't even think they have 10 wins this season, Seton Hall. And the Pirates have 7 wins right now. 7 wins. And UConn just lost to them. So I looked at that spread and I said, I get it. It's Madison Square Garden. Usually you think you have a lot of UConn fans there. That was a sea of red. That was a red storm yesterday at Madison Square Garden. And I looked at that spread and I said 4.5. And I forgot you can't bet it in New York. So I went to my app and I'm looking for a lot. I'm like, where is it? Where is it? Why can't I find it? I gotta put action on this game. And of course, the bets that you aren't able to place are the ones that always win. And if I probably would have placed today, St. John's would not have won that game. That's what I do with my crazy brain of mine. But to see what Pitino's doing right now, you may not like Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino's not everybody's cup of tea. But everywhere this dude goes, as long as it's not in the NBA, just as long as it's not in the NBA, wherever this guy goes, he wins. We know what he did at Kentucky. We know what he did at Providence, getting into a Final Four. Winning a national championship at Kentucky. The run that he had at Louisville. I still view them as national champions. I saw Luke Hancock was at the game yesterday. He was the most outstanding player of that Final Four. I guess they can't even acknowledge it, whatever that dopey stuff is, the NCAA, where they take down banners and things happen and they try to make it as if it doesn't happen. But this dude, he was like, when he was out of college basketball after Louisville, I think he was coaching in Greece. And that's where he's coaching. And then he goes to Iona, gets them in the NCAA tournament twice. And then Rapoli at St. John's, who's the big booster, wanted to bring him there. And I thought one of the Hurley should have been the coach at St. John's years ago. I remember tweeting that out. And last year he gets 20 wins at St. John's. And now he has them at, I think, 24-4 in the 7th team in the country. Rick Pitino, once again, he's not everyone's cup of tea. He may not do everything the right way. But that dude is one of the best basketball coaches I've ever seen. And that dude just knows how to win in college. And, there's not many other people, if you're trying to just win in college basketball that are active, that you're picking over Rick Pitino. And I hope that we get to see a white suit in the NCAA tournament. I always used to love when he'd show up on the sidelines in in the white suit. But that dude is just a boss. He's 72 years old. I would like to look that cool when I'm 70. I'm 30. I don't even look that cool right now. That dude's at 72. You see the shots of him online yesterday? That is just he's a gangster. That's what Rick Pitino is. The OG in Rick Pitino. We got to get him on the show. I don't know if we can, but we got to get him on the show because I could just listen to Rick Pitino. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to think Rick Pitino is going to pass away before I do, just by the numbers. If I could pick someone to do my eulogy, Rick Pitino would be someone. I just love hearing him speak. Unbelievable. Santa's like, what a way to end the show. Wait, you thought you were going to do my eulogy?
No, Stu.
No, Rick Pitino. Sorry, Stu. Thanks to Stu. Thanks to Santa. Thanks to Ack. Thanks to each and every one of you. Thanks to James Palmer as well. I'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. I'm Zach Gelb. I'm out. Bye-bye. Peace.